Good evening, everyone, and welcome to September 19th regularly scheduled board meeting. We are returning from executive session. Said the pledge before we retire to executive session. So now we are reconvening to the public session, and our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the August 15th board meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Curiosities, discussion, comments? Ms. Umbarski.
Yes, I have a comment because I had emailed this at the last meeting, my concern about, oh, sorry, yes I do, extend. Yes, I wasn't here at the last meeting in August when you guys had a discussion about meetings minutes. So I had emailed open meeting law, as it is my favorite thing to do, and I'd like to share just what he responded to me, and I can give this to Candy for the record. For a public body to comply with OML minutes must be taken at its meetings according to public office law. Such minutes shall consist of a record or summary of all motions, proposals, resolutions, and any other matter formally voted upon and the vote therein. Due to the above minutes need not be verbatim or otherwise include details beyond those required, the decision whether to include more than the statutory minimum is within the discretion of the individual assigned to take the minutes. So that is within the power of Candy Bain. For the last however many years, Candy has been the person who has taken our minutes. She has always put in a board member's name, not a board member commented. For people who might be in the deaf community, who are reading and using it, I want them to know my name and what I said as a person and not the board had a discussion. She has taken impeccable minutes. And it's very strange that all of a sudden, especially now, with the redistricting and everything that is so important, that things are becoming more and more redacted. Furthermore, a decision from the open government, an opinion that they wrote about the minutes. Significantly, there is nothing in the open meeting law or other statutes of which I'm aware that requires minutes must be approved. Nevertheless, it is a practice and public bodies must approve them. Furthermore, if you guys can also have this as an email, lastly, you wrote about the minutes of the meetings for the city council are recorded on videotapes, and that serves as official minutes. While an audio or video recording would likely contain these elements of minutes, I believe that minutes should nonetheless be reduced to writing in order that they constitute a permanent written record that can be viewed by the public. To finish the email that I had gotten from that, in other words, minutes must be prepared and available to the public upon request within 2 weeks of an open meeting. If an agency maintains a regularly and routinely updated website and utilizes a high-speed internet connection, those minutes must be posted to the agency's website. The school district may choose, however, to post an unabridged recording to the meeting law in lieu of posting the minutes. Regardless, meeting minutes must and still be prepared and made upon request. So basically, within 2 weeks, a draft of minutes should be made available to the public. No matter what, if somebody were to send in a FOIL, those minutes are supposed to be available. So my problem is that we get the minutes, it's only an executive content, the public doesn't get to see the minutes until after we approve them. I believe the minutes should be in draft form, and they should be made readily available within that 2-week time frame that we're supposed to follow, because that's what it says, right? And I also really want to reiterate that it is up to the person the board appoints to take the minutes, how they choose to do it. So later on, whoever the board is, if they say, you know, these minutes aren't saying what I say as a board member, then that board can choose to whether or not whoever they want to vote on gets to do it. So it's just strange to me that it changed, and I want to make sure that I empower Candy to take the minutes that she wants to take, because it's up to her interpretation. If she wants to write my name down for what I said, which I believe she does, because that's what she's done for the many, many years, I don't want her to feel like somebody's telling her to change the way that she does something. Thank you.
I'll just say we read into the record what the open meeting citation was on the law, and we are in compliance. So your interpretation may be your interpretation, but we're in compliance.
I have one.
Push once for blue dots.
Well, I can talk loud, if it's okay with everyone. I just have one change in the minutes. I'd like to bring to the attention, under discussion of athletic passes, there was a vote about voting for modified if we were going to charge, and I was in favor of charging. It says not in favor of charging, so I just wanted to make that correction to the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I say no also.
Let me clarify, you don't approve of the minutes, or you just don't approve of the policy? Because we're just approving minutes that were taken. I just want to clarify, you just don't approve of the minutes, period?
If we vote no, we vote no, right? Why do we have to clarify what we're saying?
Well, historically, you have to clarify why you vote no. You always say the public has a right to know. Now I'm asking, are you saying you're against the policy as it is? That's why you're voting no. I just want to know.
No, I haven't.
Well, out of respect for the people listening at home, we should use the microphone.
Okay, I'm voting no. I wasn't here in August, so I'm voting no on minutes.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
also, I think the minutes should have their names, the board members' names. I was on the board for 10 years, back in 93 to 2003, and they always had board members' names, what they said, and I think that's important because you should know who's saying what. So that's my opinion, but I'm voting no. I watched the whole meeting, I saw it, I saw the minutes, but I'm voting no on the minutes.
All right, thank you.
Because I wasn't here.
Abstentions?
I need to speak too, and I'm voting no for all of the reasons that I had said earlier. I do believe that board members should have their name associated with what they say. For the public to see, for people who are hearing impaired, for people who need to be able to read it visually. This is an important thing. They're official documents. If a member of the public wants to file a formal complaint, and you went to the commissioner to file something, they're going to go based on your minutes. You're not going to send them something based on a video. It's for your public's best interest to be able to know who said what in a board meeting. It's to protect them. It's what we do. It's why we get voted in. So those are all the reasons that I said no.
Thank you. Abstentions? All right, now we go to our community questions and comments. So I just want to say during this period, we will allow the floor to be open for public comment. The period in total will last 30 minutes unless the board votes to extend the comment section. Those who wish to comment during this time period, we ask that you speak at the designated provided podium. State your name and address. You adhere to a 5-minute rule and follow board policy 2370, which you can attach via QR code when you come in. All right. Thank you.
They get fickle sometimes.
My name is Mary Jo Glanton. I live in Thorne Street in Horseheads, New York. I wasn't aware of the change in the minutes format. I happen to agree with Katrina that I base my vote on what I see you do. And if I can't tell which of you is being more fiscally responsible or program responsible, I don't have enough information. So it's food for thought. I want to discuss also the fact that I think it would be beneficial for the community, for your constituents, if they could contact you directly via email. Not necessarily a personal email, but an email that you are able to access on your own via the school district. I don't think that it should be sent to one big box and disseminated from there. That's not the way I know of any other board to run, any other publicly responsible board. The next thing I want to mention is the redistricting plan. I went to the forum last week. There were a couple of people, including myself, who spoke out against it. I'm asking you to delay your vote because I don't believe you have all of the information. I'm also asking you to delay your vote because I think that in general, the Horsett's 2030 program should be evaluated. Any program as big as that has a go, no-go milestone every couple of years. I haven't seen that happen. I took a look at the auditor's report on capital expenditures. It's on page 56 in the external audit report. Right now, as of the end of June 2024, we're appropriating $231 million in project costs. That doesn't include interest. Where's that money going to come from? We're pricing people right out of this district. All of that we have to pay interest on. Those projects happen to represent expenditures. I went through all of the change order summaries. I will admit there could be some inaccuracies in my data. However, I don't think they're material enough to change the comment that I'm making. Since 2018, we have incurred change order costs of almost $4 million. That's over $500,000 a year in change order costs. Change order costs, for those of you who might not be aware, are costs that are additional to the initially negotiated contract. So we're going to be paying $4 million more. Now granted, there might be a contingency plan or a contingency fund. Doesn't mean we have to spend it. $4 million more, and we're only in 2024. We have 6 more years of this. How much more are we going to be expending? Of those change orders, almost $2 million are due to omissions. That's the title, that's the category they gave it. Omissions. $2 million. That doesn't make any sense to me. If you take a look at another page in the audit, page 38, it gives you a list of long-term debt obligations to date. At the bottom of the page, they show you that in total, we'll be paying just under $73 million, pardon me, in principal. We'll be paying just under $26 million in interest. And that's for expenses to date. That doesn't include what we've got coming up. If you take a look at the change order list, some of the things that are on there are unbelievable and unbelievably priced. I'd like to know who's reviewing these change order summaries. I'd also, and I did a Freedom of Information request this morning, or this afternoon, I want to see the AIA G703 documents. It gives you a list of exactly what the project budget is. It tells you what percentage is completed, how much is being retained and won't be paid until the punch list is complete. All of that is important information for, I think, the board to see. The contractor, the architect, the administration can give you whatever spin they want. You need to see the documents that are prepared when they request the payment so you can ask better questions and see the descriptions or pay attention to the descriptions of the change orders. I'm asking for more transparency, better community engagement, and more fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
All right, I'd just like to respond to a few things. When the project is established, there's also a contingency fund established. So if the public says we are going to fund $90 million, the architects and the Wellivers say, all right, you have to set aside out of that $90 million a percentage in contingency. So if something goes wrong we go into that pool of money. It doesn't come out of the budget, it comes out of the contingency. So for example, in the high school, when they built the library, they found barrels buried in where the interior parking lot was.
Cesspool.
That was a field condition that nobody knew those barrels were buried, but they had to be taken out. So we go to the contingency fund. No contractor said, oh, we're putting in the contingent, we're gonna bid to take barrels out, because nobody knew they were there. So there is a contingency fund that does not affect the budget. It's already there. If you want to know the percentages of the project that is completed, what percentage of the contingency fund has been used, and what percentage of the contingency fund is left with numbers, every cost order log is on the agenda, and it is contained in every one of those cost order logs. I see them every month. And it comes up and it shows what percentage is there. So the information that you're requesting is easily accessible.
Can I respond or no?
No, I'm just asking, telling you,
Well, I
responding
would
to.
have a response to those.
It's not, this isn't intended to be a debate. You can submit questions via email or whatever, and we'll
I
be.
didn't finish my 5 minutes. Can I do that with a response?
I don't know what time you had left. You said you were done. So, I just wanted to explain how the contingency works, because you left the public with the impression that somehow it was being taken out of the budget and that was doing things with the budget. There's a contingency fund established for specific things that happen during construction.
So I stated that in what I said. I said, I know there's a contingency fund. It doesn't mean we have to spend it.
Well, would you have preferred we left those barrels in the ground?
In that specific situation, no, but I'm talking about $2 million more of omissions that led to change orders. That's what I'm talking about.
All right. It happens. I don't know, maybe that's not the right response, but field conditions happen.
I'm not talking about the field conditions. That's a separate category.
Okay. I'm just letting you know what the procedure is and the process. It's reviewed every month. So there's people looking at it every month.
Great, the blue light's on. I wasn't intending Jessica Nickelman, Hillview Drive in Millport. I wasn't planning on standing up here. I hate doing this, so please bear with me. I was also at the community forum for the redistricting, and having heard the same commentary both evenings, I do feel like I need to offer a counterpoint to the board. We spend a lot of time with our students talking about social emotional wellness and managing emotions and change and how that's incredibly hard. We talk to them about it when they move from 4th grade to the intermediate school. We talk to them about it when they are preparing to graduate. We spend a lot of time with them, talking them through the fact that change is hard. And we sometimes have change in the district, even as staff members. When our 12 ones and our 15 ones split, that was a change. And people were really nervous and concerned. And what is that going to look like for my job? What's that going to look like for the children that I work with? What is that going to be? Over the summer, I've had several staff members reach out to me, and their main source of anxiety is the uncertainty that is coming from this. Decisions cannot move forward without an initial step, in this particular case, the decision tonight. We talk a lot about care and compassion, but these decisions and making sure they go smoothly for, most importantly, our students, takes time. Time for staff movement, time for schedules, time for adjustment. And the greatest gift that you could give us as a staff would be the decision so that we can have the time to make the steps that we need to do to ensure that this runs smoothly for students. I know that sometimes there are loud voices, but I'm going to quote you directly from your webpage, which says, "You must guard against confusing what may be a few voices in the community with consensus as a whole." Thank you.
All right, thank you to the public for a robust conversation.
If I can make just one announcement real quick, we were scheduled to have a capital project presentation, but because we have the redistricting and the auditing, we are moving that to October because they have to deal with the BCS and also explain where the district is with roughly about $400 million of potential repairs, as well as including those in that number are the repairs that are currently scheduled to be made. So it's not 400, it's what we're doing plus the state required mandated reporting to let the state know how their facilities are doing.
All right, now we go to our report from our student representative, and I'd like to welcome Ms. Mia Sophia to her first board meeting and her first official time speaking to the public on behalf of the students in the district.
Mia, good luck with the microphone.
Hi, I'm Mia. This month, fall sports have begun. The women's marching band plays first at the first competition of the season, and the football team finished first at their first game. Seniors at the high school celebrated their last first day of school. Next week, Spirit Week will take place, and it will be followed by the homecoming game and dance. Horseheads High School Student Council had their first meeting. Class officer elections took place at the high school as well. The middle school completed input testing. Center Street hosted their special character assembly. Ridgewood hosted their open house September 18th and Saturday, September 8th. They hosted their back to school events. Gardner Road held their ice cream social. Big Flats Elementary celebrated Dot Day. Annual open house will be Tuesday, September 24th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And they will be celebrating Teaching Assistance Day on September 27th.
All right, thank you very much. And I like the idea that you included the elementary schools also, not just the high school, so very complete report, thank you. All right, now we move to our external auditor's report. Mr. Tom Zuber will make the presentation. Welcome, Mr. Zuber.
Instructions would be good. If it was a calculator, I'd be good. So good evening. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. We should to talk a little bit about the June 30th, 2024 basic financial statement. Something to keep in mind that this financial statement is the result of a budget process that you started almost 2 years ago, right? Higher? So it's a result of a budget process that you started almost 2 years ago. You did meet with the audit committee last week and spent about 40 minutes with the audit committee talking about the basic financial statement. It's about a 65-page document. We did spend some time with the audit committee. We had a nice conversation. We talked about year-over-year variances. We talked about budgeting. We talked about fund balance and reserves. and we talked about internal controls, checks and balances. So we had a very nice meeting with the audit committee. What I just put together is just a quick summary of a few highlights, some of the important items just to keep in mind as you look at the basic financial statements. Again, 60-page document. You should have received it in your board packet. Certainly, if you have questions, I will try and respond to those. We did issue an unqualified opinion, no material weaknesses, significant deficiencies. That's really the opinion that you're looking for. Okay, that's the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the standards that are out there. And as you know, school districts continue to face challenges. Some of those challenges related to state aid uncertainty, certainly the property tax cap, employee benefit challenges, which is something that we talked a little bit about in our internal control communication. Obviously, inflation has been some challenges for school districts, as well as the federal stimulus dollars. And as those dollars are beginning to finish up, managing those federal stimulus dollars and the expenditures that related to those federal stimulus dollars. So again, a lot of challenges out there, and the district did every year in good financial position, in good financial condition. Just a few comments based on the overall financial outlook. Just a couple of comments on the general fund. That's primarily what I'll focus most of my comments on. Is that overall on a $92 million budget, where you had an estimated revenue, you estimated that you were going to collect about $92 million. You collected a little bit more than that. You collected about 93.2. So you generated a positive variance on the revenue side of about $1.2 million. Okay. And on the expense side of the budget of about $95 million that you were going to spend, you spent a little over $94.5 million. So you spent about 98% of your budget, 98.5% of your budget. Okay, so you're very tight on the expense budget, and if you recall, one of the reasons for that is that you've seen some challenges specifically in the benefit area, right? If you recall, you've seen some uptick in health insurance costs related to the school district, primarily because you're a self-funded school district. Okay. If you recall, the board had to amend the budget in order to help offset some of the claims costs. Okay, so that's one of the things that happened. Now, the other thing the district did is they did appropriate about $2.6 million in fund balance to support the 23-24 budget. Okay, but overall, your general fund balance went down about $1.2 million. Okay, at that total point. And just to keep in mind, so when you went into this budget cycle, the 23-24 budget cycle, you were planning on reducing fund balance $2.6 million. Okay, and you ended up only reducing it by $1.2 million. Okay, so that means those budgetary surpluses I talked about helped reduce what you were planning on reducing your efforts. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And as you look at 24-25, you're looking to erode $3.7 million in fund balance because you're appropriating fund balance and reserves totaling about $3.7 million. Okay, so that means you have that. The difference between your estimated revenues and your expenditures in your budget projection is about $3.7 million. Okay. Again, if you recall, this is a budget process that started more than 2 years ago, right? So again, something that we've all seen the challenges with that budget process, specifically with inflation and costs associated with that. Okay. So again, just a couple bullet points related to the general fund. And before we talk about a few of the other funds, I see there's a quick question here.
Can we wait to the end
Sure.
of your discussion and then have all the questions at the end, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So again, so that's just a quick discussion of the general fund. Again, the district did spend about $2.7 million in federal stimulus dollars. And as you remember, the last round of those federal stimulus dollars ended this fall. So again, the district is finishing up on the tail end of those expenditures. Again, you do have a plan to make sure you're monitoring those expenditures, and any of those reoccurring expenditures are built back into the general fund. So again, those are those federal stimulus dollars that we talked about. The school lunch fund, and you're doing a very good job with regard to the school lunch program. You are able to reimburse the general fund for some individual costs, which is very beneficial, and you're within what the federal government likes you to be in with regard to fund balance, within that 3-month average. So that's very positive. If you recall, we talked about that last year as part of the audit process, that you need to manage that, and certainly the district has done a good job with that. And then the last bullet point, really on those operating statements, the different funds that you have. Obviously, you have a capital project. You've had some significant capital projects that the voters have approved over the past few years. And that capital project does show a deficit fund balance. That's because you're financing the project with what's called bond anticipation notes, so short-term financing. When you issue your surety bonds, right, those revenues will be recognized and those deficits will go away. And that's very standard practice when it comes to municipalities and financing capital projects, right? So again, it's that one key item with regard to the capital project. A couple of other items just to highlight. In addition to those operating statements, when you open up financial statements, and school districts are a little unique, or municipalities are a little unique, you have these operating statements, which are the ones that I just talked about. You also have this corporate style, this entity-wide financial statement that captures all of your capital assets as well as your long-term obligations. And that statement does present a negative net position of about $68 million. Okay? And again, part of the reason for that deficit is because the school district has to recognize what's called a retiree health obligation. So the school district hires an actuarial, they come in, they have to analyze your different contracts. Okay? And based on those contracts, they said that you've committed $147 million to your employees and retirees when they retire, okay, to support the health benefit that you provide. And that obligation you have to recognize in this corporate style financial statement. However, you can't fund it. New York State does not allow you to fund it. So that's why you see that negative $68 million in that position. Okay, so just to keep that in mind, it's one of those numbers that can jump out at you when you open financial statements. The key to remember is that's not how you operate when it comes to retired health. You operate on a pay-as-you-go basis. So if your retired cost is $500,000, you budget $500,000 and you pay $500,000. Okay, so that's how that retirement costs work. You're on a pay-as-you-go. But the intent of this is to capture what you've committed, what are those long-term obligations that you've committed based on those contracts. Okay, so that's just the one thing that jumps out when you look at that corporate style financial statement. But again, you need to remember the fund you're focusing on or should focus on really should be those the operating statements, the general fund, and how you're managing the general fund from a annual basis. Okay? The other items we noted, so that's the basic financial statement, so roughly about a 60-page document. We also talked about the internal control communications. There was one communication we talked about, really more of an informational type item just to remind the board, the challenges that you face with health insurance. You did have to amend the budget. This is the second year that you had to do that. Something to keep in mind is there are some reserves out there specific to health insurance. The challenge is that you have to work with some local legislative folks in order to get that through the state process. So that would be something that we're recommending that the school district consider looking at going forward and getting your legislative folks involved. In order to create this reserve that will help you manage some of those spikes in the health insurance. Currently, there isn't a reserve specific to health insurance, but you can be opted into this one through a process you go through with your state representatives. Okay. There are some schools in the area that have gone through that process and that are actually identified in the law as needed. And so that would be the process we're suggesting. And again, a couple of items we talked about last year that will sort of very positive coming on. Okay, so that's roughly a 60-page document in about 5.5 minutes. Okay, and we did meet with the audit committee, spent a lot of time with the audit committee talking about the audit and answering their questions about the audit process. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zuber. Are there any questions from board members? Trina?
So, questions about the audit report. In regards to the financial highlights on page 4, it says that we owe, what we owe exceeds our total assets, and we did touch on that by a little under 32 million. When we passed the budget this year, did that aid the decrease the deficit in that position? Or does it mean that the decrease in deficit is actually increasing in what we owe as a district? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
Okay, so on page 4, oh, now let's see, I say page 4, but it says, when you do your reader, page 4 is different than the actual report, page 4, so I think page 6. Yes, yep, because I said under financial highlights, so okay, that's page 6. It said that our total assets, and yet we saw a decrease, our total assets are increasing, but we saw a deficit by a little under 32 million. When we passed the budget this year, did that aid in the decrease of the deficit in that position? So, we're 32 million in a deficit. When we this year, our budget that we passed, right? Did that help make the deficit smaller?
So there's, I'm not sure what deficit you're talking about. There's a deficit in the entity-wide financial statement that I talked about. That's that $64 million deficit.
Okay, so then, okay, maybe I can rephrase
I'm
this.
sorry, $155 million deficit. And that,
Okay, we can skip that one. Maybe I'm not explaining myself well enough. So what I'm basically trying to say is, we passed the budget, we had to go out and challenge it, and so our deficit is the 32 million. The money that we passed this year in the budget, is that anywhere reflected in this audit, or does that have nothing to do with this audit?
so each budget is a new, basically, start.
Fresh, okay.
And you are appropriating $3.7 million from the current year fund balance to support next year's general fund operations.
Okay, so we have $3.7 million right now as a board to decide where we want to appropriate that money.
Well, those dollars are already used to support the 2025 budget. So you have a budget of roughly $95 million. You have estimated revenues of roughly $92 million. You got $3 million appropriated fund balance and reserves. They are going to be used to support those expenditures. So if you expense every single part of that expense budget, you're going to use that $3.7 million. Okay? And the reason you didn't, and just like last year, you were going to, you would plan on using $2.7 million. The reason you didn't use 2.7 is because you had some budgetary savings, right, where you collected some more revenue.
Okay, so in this report compared to last year's report, would you say that the school district's financial position is improving or deteriorating?
Well, I think you basically improved from what your plan was, okay? So I think that's one thing that you would look at, all right? But I think you were within the parameters of your budget. Okay.
Okay, and then when referring to the governmental activities, are those monies that are put in the debt service category of the money that we have to account for the budget that we have to pay for and that we cannot take away from? So basically the governmental money is money that we can't take away from it.
Well, all of the funds are considered governmental funds with the exception of the custodial accounts, which are very minor anyways. But all of the expenditures are considered governmental.
Okay, and then I guess I'm just going to jump ahead to my the one page that
All
the
right,
series
I'm going to
on.
interrupt you. 5 minutes is up.
But some of it, are you spending from when I talk? Or are you trying to from when I talk?
You have 5 minutes to ask questions. That's what 5 minutes
Some of this is not understanding the question.
is.
So I just wanted to talk about the, I just wanted to be.
No, your time's up.
I mean, you're really gonna make it so I can't ask about.
Policy.
Funds and $25 million.
Point of
in
order?
insurance?
Point of order?
I mean, really.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is I'd like to hear from other board members if anyone else has a comment or question. I just want to say thank you very much. This was beautiful as it was last year. Thank you.
Katrina! Point of order! I can hear every word that you are saying and you are being disrespectful.
Yes, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
I just use my teacher voice, they don't like that thing. But anyway, with your PowerPoint and listening, things that I've heard that make me very happy as a board member are no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, am I saying that right? Tight on the expense budget, good job on school lunch. Prior recommendations that your firm gave to us have been implemented. So that's saying that we listen to what you tell us to do and we do it to improve things. And thank you very much. And a thank you to Katie and her team for getting us to this point.
Do you want to speak on it? Yeah. Other board members?
I just have a question about, should I ask you or should I wait till April report? It's about the debt service summary. Can you explain the summary? Can you explain that debt service summary? It says from 2025 years, it's on page 38. And then it goes down to 2035 or 37. So my question is this debt service, are they from the referendums of the capital projects that you have all this debt from? Or, I don't understand the principle, I mean, I see principle. Is that a projection of what you think the principle will be?
Can I ask, what document are we looking at? What page?
It's page 38, I think of the 64-page document.
So which one? The horse heads RA 24, the horse heads, so it must be the horse heads RA 24 documents? It's under public
The
content.
very first one, the other two doesn't, they don't have dollar amounts in.
And what page, I'm sorry, in 38?
On page 38.
Thank you.
So the outstanding obligations that you have currently are relating to the capital improvement projects as well as the bus purchases that we had in the next.
Okay, so at the very bottom one, it says, 2025, which shows principal interest, that's the capital project part, and the bus one is the above.
Okay, well, we're not on.
Oh,
Based on the minutes, people will not be able to hear you.
oh,
You
because
have to
she
speak
talked.
loud.
Okay, so sorry about that. I don't know how I turned it off. I'm asking about the last paragraph of the debt service. If you can explain that to me. So, is that all capital project? Debt service, and it says serial bonds, what does that mean?
So the serial bonds relate to both the capital project as well as the.
You talk in the microphone so we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
Here, you want mine? You can take that. Same line.
so page 37 of the basic financial statements, it talks about a summary of the serial bonds that you have currently outstanding as of June 30th, 2024. Okay, and it would suggest that you have principal and interest payments relating to the debt service for the school district. So in those principal and interest payments relate to primarily the buses and capital project serial bonds. Okay, if you recall, I did mention that you're currently financing the project, you're buying anticipation notes. So that permanent financing doesn't show up in the financial statements just yet. It will show up when you issue the serial bonds and permanent financing related to the projects.
Okay, so no serial bonds.
I had the wrong report. I was looking at 2023.
Okay,
That's
so
why
you see where I'm talking now? Okay, so will some of, do those bonds, do they get covered by building aid in the future?
That's why I apologize. The $72 million, yes, those are the serial bonds that we have outstanding. And primarily there is construction bonds in there as well as school bus bonds. And as you know, part of the way school district financing works for capital projects is you have state aid helps offset any eligible costs related to the project. So although you may issue, and I'm going to use round numbers here, $70 million in bonds, a portion of those bonds are going to be reimbursed over the life of the bonds by New York State through state aid, through building aid. Okay.
And then will the taxpayers have to fund some of those too? Like when we go to budget vote, you'll see those come in? Or-
With any project, there's a local portion, right? And so there's a local portion. I do believe this district used your capital reserves, okay, as part of the financing of the project, which would reduce the local portion of the capital project. So, so there is a local portion, but the district, in part of their budget planning, planning to reduce the impact to the local taxpayer by the use of the capital reserve dollars. And I believe for the, it looks like we use about $10 million for each of the different referendums and capital reserve dollars.
Yes, if I can add just real quick, it's a good point, Sue, is that of the 230 or 229, roughly about 10 to 15% is a local share. Of that, say just 10% is 23 million. Another 15 is probably somewhere right around 30 million. But the voters authorized $20 million of their own capital funds to offset that 30-something million dollar local share. If people remember, the voters authorized an additional $3 per 1,000 tax for both of these projects. But during that time, from 1804, it was supposed to go up to roughly 2104, but our tax rate has gone down during all these projects and everything to 1598 per 1,000, which means our budgets have been funded, our capital projects are being funded, and yes, assessments are going up because the wealth in the district is going up, because when you improve schools, you improve your area, people want to come. And that's what's been going on. So, all approved by the voters.
Okay, thank you for trying to explain it. Thank you.
Others? Katrina, you have 3 minutes. You have a second round for 3 minutes.
Okay, so my question is, when we're talking about the interest on the serial bonds, that's the 25 million, are we responsible to pay that in full, or does the state help us pay our interest rate?
So again, I'm going to say I'm not a state expert on that piece, but there is a portion that the state pays for the interest cost related to the project. So yes, it's very similar. I don't know if the state pays for 100% of the interest, but they pay for a portion of it. I would have to defer to a building aid expert on that.
And just to help out on that, what happens is we contract with fiscal advisors, and they provided the board each time with the potential amortization schedule out over a 15-year process with interest as well as aid calculations. So that's all.
Okay, so those, what you're saying from what we got from the specialists, are those documents available to view? So we can see what that is and what that looks like to understand? Because when I look,
Katie, you have the originals, don't you?
right, I have all that stuff. If we get the true debt schedule, because, I mean, when you're looking at this, it jumps from 2029, when you're going from 2030 to 34, that says $31 million. That's a pretty big jump. And when I think about interest and I think about what happened this year at the budget process, I'm a little concerned because I saw what $1 million looked like. So when I think about $25 million interest, I would really like to know how much state aid we're getting and what our future really looks like. Because I'm not sure with just looking at this. I need to have more breakdown.
What happens is, just so that you're clear, state aid is finally set upon completion of the project because they do the calculations, was this aidable, was this not aidable. Usually, I think we were targeted to be somewhere around 83 to 86% is the initial estimates. That's what they go by, and then as they build the project, the architects and construction managers try to make it as aidable as possible to raise the money, raise the amount of aid coming in from the state as much as possible. Plus, you have to factor in how much you don't borrow from using the local share that the voters offer. So the final calculations are once the final project is done and fully bonded. So the numbers that we have are only the estimates at this point. They will have to do once the project is fully bonded out.
And just the format of the audit report is the standard audit report. We would not include any projected numbers of it. The information that's reported in the financial statements are the amortization schedules of the current outstanding debt. Okay? We would not include in the financial statements any aid associated with that debt that you will receive in the future on those debt payments. So the presentation of the financial statement, this is how it is supposed to be presented when it comes to the outstanding principal and interest payments. Okay?
Okay, so then to bring it back to the budget, during this year, we were talking in the second referendum, we didn't quite have 55, I think it was 55 million or 50 million from the second referendum. So that would not be included in this yet because that's still money from the second referendum that we will be spending. So that would be added to it when it comes time to spend it. Is that correct?
So if you're saying if there's debt that hasn't been issued yet, then that is not reflected in this financial statement.
Thank you very much.
Christine?
So just a point of clarification, where when we look at that and it has the year 2029 at 5.7 million and then it has 2030 to 34 at 31 million, it's not a jump from 5 million to 31 million from 1 year to the next. That 2030 to 34, that's a 5-year period, right? So I just wanted to clarify that I wanted to correct that it's not a jump all of a sudden in 1 year from 5 million to 31. It's multiple years from that.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Mr. Zuber. Appreciate your time tonight. All right, now we go to section 6, and we have a report from the superintendent, Dr. Douglas.
Thank you, President. Hello? Hello? My blue light's on. Hello? What? Oh. Hello? Is that on? That's better. Thank you, President Conklin. A couple things before we get to the redistricting presentation. I've already mentioned capital project presentation will move to the following month. Our community engagement forum report will be included in the presentation. And just so the board knows, we have some letters of the community that sent them in to us. We put them on under our executive share file. One of the things that is going on is our professional learning curriculum meetings. I'm going to ask Tony if he wants to get up and announce, because we have two separate committees, but really the work is starting to merge into one, and it poses a unique situation to combine the two for the MTSS. But on top of it, it causes a problem because I have board members on each committee, and I can't put all the board members on the committee because it would constitute the board. So we will need some guidance on that, but I'll let Tony talk.
So the plan of our professional learning committees, all our committees that were created back in 2016-17, there's just been over the years a need to change and revise and to look at our work. And we're at that point right now where we have two teams, a professional learning team that is overseeing conference day work and some other minor tasks. We're a very passionate group of small group. We don't have a good attendance at it. We're a very passionate group that love the professional learning. And then we have a very small group of individuals that show up to do the curriculum advisory. The curriculum advisory has two major components to it, and that's to review the course. The new course wants to be offered. It goes through that committee first before coming to me and then up to the board. As also, it serves for textbook adoption. Something, as you know from our curriculum work, we really don't do anymore. Our teachers are awesome and create their stuff themselves, and we use a lot of different resources when we deliver curriculum now. So the data, the anthologies and things like that are starting to go by the wayside, especially with digital curriculums and what's online anymore. So with that said, we have these two committees that, if put together, they have four on the board. But the other members of the committee are small. We don't have a large contingency. We haven't for several years. You know from our district goals, and we've been talking about the last 3 years, the focus of our work has been MTSS, the multi-tier system supports. To make that work come to fruition, we want to take these two teams, we want to merge them together to this purpose. To serve and to work together in professional learning requirements and curricular requirements to move MTSS forward with capacity. So what I proposed to Tom and we brought forward was this idea of combining these two committees and to, we'd have to alter board membership, so not to have a quorum, and therefore they can serve as to take on this new very strong initiative we have going in the multi-tier system supports, still maintain those other duties of dealing with conference days as well as those curriculum, course, the textbook when needed, but really now giving a really good purpose. I know some of you have served on those committees over the years. You've seen the membership wane. We do have, we want to be conscious of capacity and what people are showing up for, and we can still maintain the purpose of those two committees now into one with that initiative moving forward that covers the social, emotional, behavioral, as well as the academic piece of our work. I think the professional learning committee and the curriculum advisory, we're often focused on that one academic. It's time to start expanding and ensuring that work goes into the wellness and the behavior. Although we do have a separate wellness team, you know that MTSS takes all three and puts them together. So that's in a nutshell. That's what I was requesting and how that may go forward with the board membership.
So basically what happens is these are superintendent committees where board only sit in advisory capacity with my team, as it's primarily made in the district. So what I'd ask is that the board understand that we're going to merge these, but I'd ask the president to reach out to the individuals and see if somebody's willing to step off or something, but we'll put together something for him to try to give us direction. I do believe you have meetings this month that are still separate, so still attend those, because more will be discussed, and this will start in the end of October, correct? Okay. A couple other things. Normally, a former board member, Tom Casey, would be making this announcement regularly, but we have mock interviews going on, and my administrative team goes, where's Dan Dorr?
Right here.
Because Dan's over there, he's behind the podium. He is actually helping out with Deb Lynch now and the Career Development Council and doing some coordination. Plus, you can see that he's on the meeting tonight because we've also announced that we were given the Energy Green Clean Schools grant that was done between the Office of Facilities as well as our grant writer for some $250,000, and now we can possibly expand it up to almost $1 million, which we got to start slow. But that's tonight, which Dan would be hired, but he's serving a dual role. But I just wanted to let you know, you don't contact Dan. You guys know, just contact Terry. She's going to put this in this week's update so you know the information. What it is interviewing students and helping them understand the interview resume process. You can do 3 students, you can do a half a day, you can, how do I do it? Pretty
You're
good?
doing great. I would just say that board members, especially those who are constantly being dosed with anti-social media and the poison therein.
This is a great part of dealing with kids.
This is, you get to work with the product.
Yeah.
It reminds you why you're sitting up there.
So we will put this out, just let Terry know, and she will do all the scheduling with Dan if you're able to. I know I'm usually there in the morning, Tony's usually there in the afternoon, several people, as well as many of our community members. And if you're here as well, please just contact our office, we'll get you in touch. They're always looking for people. We have over 260 to 300 kids in a grade level, about half of them each semester that need to be interviewed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
In addition, we have ticketing that's been going on. That was the discussion last time. We just wanted to give you a quick update, seeing how we had our first major home event. There's Dr. Tate back there. He was out of town for that first event, but I was there. I want to thank Liz Adele Wheeling for helping us out, as well as other people that have come, because honestly, 2 ticket windows are not enough when everybody shows up for a 7 o'clock game at 6:45. So we opened the gates at 5 o'clock, but I will tell you, the response from our seniors, our veterans, have been overwhelming. People coming in and saying thank you. They appreciate the understanding for them with their tickets. Even the parents of students are saying this isn't bad. I mean, when we go to a sectional game, we have to pay $10. What was interesting is the people that were coming from away saying, so you're letting people in free, but we've got to pay? That's a great idea. I don't know why we're not doing that at our house. So I expect Waverly all of a sudden to come up with that for this weekend. So who knows? But we wanted to give you an idea. Charles, do you have a couple minutes just to tell us how many season passes, ticketing, grad collections so far, students and parents' response to the, you're in 8th grade below, you got to be with your parent.
Sure.
Here's this microphone. Good luck. No, it's working.
Sure. Wasn't planning on giving you an update, but no problem. So adult tickets so far, first off, Kim Granger and Julie Tompkins, they've been helping out tremendously in the office, doing a great job, because it's an extra task for them, and it is work, so thank you to them. But adult tickets, we've sold roughly 125 right now for adults. Senior citizens were well over 130, 135. Veterans were about 20, 25. Student passes are going out great. High school, almost over half of them are going already. And middle school are going really well too. Thanks to Ron Holloway and his staff for doing that, because that's a heavy lift too. The parents with their kids, you know, it was a little pushback to start, but it's been going really well. I mean, the football game was way bigger response than I thought we'd get. I thought attendance might dip a little bit just because of it, but it was not the case. We had well over 2,000 people there last Friday, and it was not even a league game or a big type of game. So looking forward to some bigger crowds. Homecoming is going to be big. Corning will be big, and obviously when we play Vestal and hopefully host the semifinals and finals, it'll be big. So great turnout so far. Everything's going well, but thank you to everybody who's been stepping up and doing all the extra work. Appreciate that.
So I think that's that might supersede everybody. If you turn it off, if your other one should work.
Sure, we'll trust that. Thank you. Hopefully that's right. One of the things that you also need to note is we estimated, I think, in the budget around 35 to 40,000, hopefully over the course of the year. Just up until last week, we're already at roughly about 6,000, and that's without a major game. Next Friday is homecoming. We will not sell passes at the gate. So they have to buy them before Thursday, so we'll put another communication out about that, just because we know the crowd, when it comes to a Wago coming, they travel, as well as us for homecoming, it will be a rather large crowd. And then the following week is Corning. there won't be any rest because they travel well. They're going to be probably the two biggest games. But it's not just about football. Everyone, like we have volleyball right over here now, they're averaging $300, $400, $500 in sales a game. So that's just the JV varsity. And we didn't charge JV and then varsity because it's a management nightmare. But if you pay once you come in, you get both games at this point because you can't really clear it out. You would double that virtually by doing so. But right now, I think people have been very good about it. People have been very understanding. Even the parents say, you know, with the kids, if the kids get in trouble, we just say simply, you go with your parent or you're leaving and you're getting your parent from here, and it has helped. We do have to work on some control and younger kids' behavior with away guests. We had some complaints that, you know, the younger kids are, you guys stayed, you guys did that. And we've got to teach them that they're just as competitive as us, but our supervisors will be there as well. So we want to thank the board, but we most importantly want to thank our public. And again, seniors and veterans that reside here are absolutely free. You can come to the games, we'll figure that out and get them in, but we want to get you past as soon as possible. In addition, we had a great opening of school. Busing ran. I've got to give kudos to Rich, Jason, and the entire transportation center. Busing this year was absolutely, from a lot of points, a very pleasurable experience with, you know, normally we're not done until about 5:30 on the first day. We were done about 4:45. And by the end of the first week, we were closing in on our regular time. The GPS, we've heard a lot of people, I think we're at about 66% of the families that are riding are using our online data mapping, which took down the calls to the call center tremendously. And that's the hard work of the bus drivers constantly checking them in and people knowing where their children are on the buses, as well as if there's a delay. Unfortunately, we've had those swatting incidences, and on one day we have an accident and then we have a fire alarm. Parents weren't worried, they weren't calling, they were just sitting there saying, my child's here, and everything proceeded. So we want to thank everybody, and I want to thank everyone, transportation across. Please extend our kudos to an outstanding start of the year. As well as with our transportation, our maintenance facility center. Starting off and kicking off a year is huge, especially with heavy construction, and a lot of things did not miss a beat, and we're still continuing. So I appreciate that. One of the nicer things, and I'll try to wrap up so I can get into redistricting, is the district is here, pleasant to announce that we are ready to enter into an articulation agreement with Lecom Medical, Osteopathic Medical Center, basically allowing our juniors, if they meet the criteria, to work extensively with trying to gain accredited and permanent seat to medical school based on meeting the requirements straight out of high school. This is a program by Lecom to try to take our students that are here, that are interested in the medical field, and keep them here. And they will commit to them as long as they commit to the program and the operations principles, and they commit to Lecom over the time. If they meet all of that, they will be guaranteed a slot in their program. And that works with several other colleges so that they can go to them and then have that seat ready and waiting for them. So once I sign this articulation agreement, that will be in place and you'll be seeing that, and that's a wonderful thing. And it doesn't just stipulate for medical. It could be dentistry, it could be any of their processes or any of their campuses. So that's something that's open to our Horsehead students, and they'll start in their junior, entering into their senior year to make those commitments and have that access. Our counselors have already been doing it. This formalizes the agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, other than that, you know, we're going to keep kids safe. I know it can be frustrating, but the biggest thing is we have wonderful SROs. We have an outstanding sheriff's department, FBI, state troopers, that they are working on anything. I can only say, I have a son in the school. If I can send my son to school, I'm telling you it's safe because we've done everything. If I'm not going to send my son to school, I'm not going to ask anybody else to come to school. If these things keep happening, and we do eventually, because people want us to close, but if we close, we're taking it out of the first available break. So if we close now, it's coming out of either Thanksgiving or it's coming out of the winter recess and so on. If we run out of days, we are going to virtual remote learning, period. We're not going to be held hostage to foreign nationals trying to shut down our education program out of fear and terror. If there's a logical, reasonable threat, we research everything. And I want to tell you, I commend everybody, no matter what. See something, say something. It just takes time out of ours. But I can say this. My entire administrative team, I believe this board, I believe law enforcement in this area has safety as our #1 priority. And we want to thank everybody because Facebook is not the answer. Social media is only one person's perspective and it's usually not accurate. So please, trust the people that are trying to take care of everything because that's our job and it's our moral responsibility. So thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll transfer to the redistricting presentation. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, members of the community, members at home watching, this is our final district redistricting presentation to the board according to our timeline. I will be going through this as we've done it not only at the board meeting in July, in August, we've had a staff forum, we've had a community forum, and this one that everything is online, people that have reached out and talked to us a little here or there, but there has not been an overwhelming swell of major concern as this was voted upon. And for roughly since 2021, people have known this is eventually coming. Even going back to 2012, 2013, when my predecessor, Mr. Marino, and the board started on the full overhaul of the district. Basically, you've seen the timeline, the gray area. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. That's what we've been through. We're currently here in September, and it's basically our decision day. The decision day is basically for two things that I need the decision of the board. For me, any one of the four options can work. It's got to be, and I'm going to give you the best educational recommendation based on educational expertise. But what happens is, if it's 840, it's 720, it's option A, option B, it's all just a decision that's going to put things into motion. It can be either or. We have given you our take, and that will be at the end. So after tonight, what happens is people will start knowing their boundaries. They'll start knowing the schools. November and December, we're already well into it with Tyler Technology. We did have a second meeting with Tyler Technology, which they continue to affirm that there's no discernible difference and that three-tier busing will aid in the majority of the situations, especially with potential busing. In addition, by December, if we have our busing, we want to try to get that out to people as quickly as possible. And then early winter, spring, we'll be working on movement, but most of it is all cultural work at that time because this is an operation procedure and decision, but it's also a people involvement decision, and that's what we've talked about, and I'll have Joe Kohler come up in a little bit. So as we go through that, we'll end up basically getting ready for the fall of 2025, with Ridge Road will go to Center Street, and then at the fall of 2026, Ridge Road construction would be completed at that point. Currently, right now, Ridge Road is under final review at State Education, which they are right on their timeline. So we are anticipating that we will be entering into construction somewhere around March, April, May at Ridge Road, pending bids and everything else. Roughly a month behind that, the high school south. And that would be basically the completion, for the most part, of the second referendum. So once you get to that point, then we talk about the current elementary zones. Over here are the maps I explained before. Our current elementary zone is this map right here, and these are the rough distances, with Big Flats being a maximum mileage of about 7.7 miles, Gardner Road being about 8.2 miles, Ridge Road being about 11.3 miles, and Center Street being roughly 13 miles. That's basically longest distance from the school to its farthest possible pickup point. Option A and B are up there. They have current enrollment trends. And I tried to help, but these things are so small, it gets a little harder to see. But what happens is this tells the utilization, and the utilization here is roughly between 58 and 82%, with Gardner Road being the most utilized school building. The recommended boundaries, as we had demographic analysis present, we have an option A, which is This option, which has a maximum distance for Big Flats from 7.7 to 9 miles, for Gardner Road from 8.2 miles to 8.2 miles, and for Ridge Road from 11.3 miles to 12 miles. That would be the maximum, again, from the site of the school to its longest possible trip. All of those are shorter than our longest trips, which are 4 bus runs that go to Center Street at this point. One of the things that over option A and option B that the board has talked about throughout this process is can we try to minimize costs? That is one of our goals. Right now, and you'll see, we have an interactive map after today. That interactive map can be moved. If you choose option A, we'll put up option A, and that's it. People can see exactly where it goes. If it's option B, we'll put up option B, and then we'll narrow it so that people know what the decisions are, and you can zoom into it and transparency right down to your individual addresses. If there is any questions, all they have to do is call the district office, and we will work with transportation. Now, once a decision is made, we do have to notify people too. That will take a little bit, but these people will know and can also go on their own. If you look at option B, the mileage difference is Big Flats was 7.7, this is 9.8. It's about a 0.8 additional mile, and that's out to Lathrop. Garden Road is still the same at 8.2 in all 3 of the positions, and Ridge Road is at 12 miles in both option A and B for the farthest points. So again, it keeps consistent between both. Recommended enrollments. When you look at recommended enrollments, option A basically puts the utilization in option A between 90 and 94%. In option B, it puts it between 90 and 93%. We still have room. We did get a question, what about possible building in the future, like such as the thing you saw in the news at Big Flats? I don't know, we've received word that potentially that is not moving forward, but we can't know. I will be going to a meeting on Tuesday evening, once I get back from Albany, to weigh in at the zoning board about impacts of possible loading potentially 110 apartments at once. Now, what we learned is when Biltmore came on, they had roughly 88 major apartment buildings that were built sort of not all at once, but in stages, so they build them a little different. But they have roughly, I think, about 50 to 60 units. We roughly get 12 elementary students from all those units, and they are Section 8 housing. That doesn't make a difference, but it's geared towards certain types of professionals that may not be that income, whether they're 2-family, 3-family, 5-family, and so forth. They have 2- and 3-bedroom family homes. At Big Flats, they could be anywhere from 110. I think the other one, if they don't do the 4th story, they're at like 76, right? But they have said that it's senior housing, not senior housing, affordable income housing, couples housing, and maybe Section 8 housing. But nobody has the concrete plan. The problem is that will be permitted over probably a 1 or 2 year period if it was ever approved. We won't even see any type of impact of that until maybe 26, 27, or 28, depending on any potential legal litigation and so forth. But that's no different than anything like possible housing development that could be next to the Armory, possible housing development on Sing Sing Road. We do know they're geared towards senior or empty nesters, but developers can change at any time. The district has to adjust over time to its growing boundaries or changing. Our problem here is the district hasn't changed its boundaries in forever. And because of the closing of the school, that would necessitate. The board can change that boundary eventually by going through another study if things get disproportionate, if they need to. But the board does have policy that allows us to be able to take care of that on a year-to-year basis as needed. Balancing student population, that was the big thing. So when you look at the student population, we've already talked about it. We tried to balance it along social and economic needs. We tried to balance it on diversity needs. And basically what happens is we have made sure that each of the schools are very representative as close as possible to being equal without being exactly equal in all categories. In addition, elementary schools impacted by option and schools. What we did is we took this from the question in the August meeting. Option A, there are 313 students. In option B, there are 329 students that are impacted. In both of those options, 289 of those students are Center Street Elementary School because 100% of those students are going to be impacted. They're the students that are moved. Some people in our community said we should just move them. but you can't balance the schools that way. And you also have to understand that we're a whole district, and we want to make sure every student, no matter what your zip code is or what matter street you're on, you're getting the same expectation of experience and education throughout the district. If you look at it, roughly 21 to, I think it's 23, just excuse me for a minute, little numbers. 24% are being moved, but 22% of that 24% are Center Street schools. In option B, 25% of those students are being moved, but it's really 22% are Center Street. So when you look to the right, the actual non-Center Street students being impacted by option A is 24, option B is 40. That's a difference of 1.8% to 3%. But in option B, we get the biggest balance and balance across the student body, and all three schools, not just two schools, have some type of impact to it. When you look at the bottom, our utilizations work out a little bit more, and it shows what the numbers would be and where. In option B, students are divided up more between Big Flats and Gardner Road versus a lot of students in A going to Big Flats. And what happened is we tried to look at that and balance it, and option B gives a smoother spread. The biggest thing, people said, well, why can't we just move this, my friend wants to be here, my friend wants to be there. The demographer warned against that because any changes you make upset the apple cart and it keeps upsetting into the future. They tried to do it with birth demographics, as well as enrollment expectations, birth rates, and possibilities of move-ins and moves out. So they basically say, when you redraw a little line, all these items become unbalanced. And Dr. Ron Provost said, do not do that. These are the best two balanced options that they could come up with after months of work. High school start times, that was the other thing. We talked about it before. We have to have one anchor start time. And the biggest anchor start time is BOCES. BOCES starts at 9 o'clock. Right now we start at 7:55, but the problem is we have staff that only teach a half a period. And then they're off a half a period. When they can teach a full period, and they're not off. And that causes some problems even within our staffing. Those are called bookend periods. They're at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. What happens is by aligning with BOCES, the students will have the opportunity to get a full educational class here at Forsyth. And our educational mission is to try to give them the best education as possible. High school start time discussion means that by getting to BOCES, we have to try to align with them. But the big thing is, they aren't going to change because they have to deal with 21 different school districts. So this high school start time needs to align because it allows for 80-minute classes. Start at the end of the school day. You go with the early one, you get a class at the beginning. If you go with the late one, you get a class at the end. Two potential start times, 7:20 or 7:25-ish. We've got to see. Basically, it's not a set time. They've got to play with the buses. It might be 7:23. It might be 7:26. But we've got to try to make sure we find the right time for transportation to BOCES so that kids get to BOCES on time as well. Or 8:40, 8:45-ish. So that's the start time. Other educational start times will be determined once the boundaries of the high school start, because once you anchor that, that tells Tyler Technology how to try to mix elementary versus intermediate and middle school. On the next page, start time consideration, 7:20 to 7:25. Education day will start somewhere like start at 7:20 to 7:25, end around 2:20 to 2:25. It would be aligned with BOCES with a full class option in the morning at the start of the day. Extracurriculars would start roughly about 15 minutes after, because that's when the teacher's contractual workday would roughly end. Minimum educational time lost with extracurriculars, because right now currently, if a student has to go to Binghamton, we have to let them out somewhere around 2 o'clock, so they lose about an hour of instructional time. With this, if you have to go to Binghamton, they may have to leave around 2:20, 2 o'clock, less instructional time, or if they work with the others to push it back a little bit, they can leave at 2:30, and it does not impact the instructional endeavor whatsoever, and that's our #1 focus. Students will have better work opportunities with this because it opens up their hours. They are only allowed to work 4 hours, and when students get out later, they usually only work from 4 to 8. I think they have to be done by 9 o'clock. This gives them other shifts potential during the week. This also allows for students at the high school in the earlier time to be out before their siblings. This can help with coverage at home if needed. We hope that it's not needed, but we also have to recognize we have parents that may need that coverage. So this allows an older student that has the ability to be that caregiver. When you look at the other one, 840, 845, same exact thing. Line with both seats, the full classes at the end of the day. The extracurriculars, however, will start somewhere around 4 o'clock, which will push games back and push travel times back, unless we let them go. And at this point, if the other schools say we got to play at 4, we're letting kids out at 2 o'clock, right, to get there so that we have time to warm up, which means they could be actually missing 1 or 1.5 periods of time. And as well, student experience educational time loss, like we said, limited student work opportunities, because the later they go, the less opportunities they have to work, which could be beneficial or it could be detrimental, depending on the situation. They would not arrive home before their younger students in this situation, because I doubt we'd be starting our elementaries after the high school, if this is true. So those are the start time discussions. Elementary transportation, we needed to run through because we had questions on that. These are the numbers for what our current ridership is. That current ridership is going to stay about the same no matter what. Roughly about 75% of our elementary ride our buses. If we get 100%, it'd be much better because the cars would not be waiting at the line for pickup, and it makes it much easier. But we also understand everybody has to make their own decision, as long as they don't get upset that they have to wait in line. AM time for buses at elementary, these are our breakdown, number of buses, as well as the percentage of our buses. Right now, for AM and elementary, 88% of our buses are under an hour. That was a major concern, but we're doing really good. Hour and 15, 91%. But we do have some that are an hour and a half. 3. And those are all at Center Street. So we're hoping that just by that alone, we'll be able to do it. Now, can we correct this through the study? Yes, that's what we're going to try to. It may mean we have to put on a couple more buses or more staff, but we're hoping to try to do it without doing it, but we can't do it until the decision. PM buses, same exact thing. There's 1 in an hour and a half, 3 in an hour and 15, but we're almost up near 96%, an hour and a half or less. When you look at overall times for busing, same exact thing. That's both AM and PM with elementary and intermediate school. This also drags out because the intermediate school is on the tail end of the elementary bus runs, which if you have intermediate and middle school, they're all on one bus run, so you don't have the elementaries going as long because the students have to sit on there while they go to the elementary, then go to the intermediate school, which adds to the students' time on the bus. So we think that will be a positive too from Tyler Technology. Trying to keep all the papers straight. AM time for the middle school and high school, you can see the times up there. Roughly 93% or an hour and a half or less. We have 4 hour, I'm on the wrong page, sorry. Roughly 100% or an hour and 15 minutes or less, we have nothing at an hour and a half. When you go to a 3-tier busing, that bodes well, is what Tyler said. When you look at PM bus times for middle school, we have one from an hour and a half. A lot of that is because of transfers and sports runs and trying to get people all over the place for different opportunities. But 96.4% are an hour and 15 minutes or less. Again, hour and 15 is something that I believe we can live with, but we're going to try to hit the goal of an hour or less, if possible. When you look at the overall time for the middle school and high school, again, I think it's 98% or an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes or less, with one run being an hour and a half. Feedback we received. What's the expected wear and tear on the buses? The fleet is well maintained by our transportation department. What's most important about this is we're going to see the same amount of mileage, if not a little bit more, if we add buses and so forth. Just because you add the extra tier doesn't mean that you're adding significant differences, because we already run all of those with the elementaries already, because intermediate school has to go all over the district and transfer. But fleet maintenance is done very well and supported also by 100% state aid. So if we have additional wear and tear, we're also going to see additional revenue to take care of that wear and tear. Our goal of bus runs, again, put up here, is an hour or less. Pickup times may be closer to the start of the school day. Just because you change the time doesn't mean the buses are going to be on the road earlier. It depends what Tyler says and what we can do. We may be able to put out a couple bus runs earlier, but that's because they're driving out to pick up the kids at the same time, so that depending on how they route, The bus is located out in position, picking up the kids at roughly the same time, transporting back and getting a shorter ride time. Redistricting cultural teams, because I've given you a lot of data there, so I'm going to ask Joe Kohler to come up, because this is one of the most important parts of our work, because this deals with the people side of it. Not only the people side, the parent side, and the student side, and that's what we're trying to focus on. Got to use that too.
No.
Drive it. Same.
Good evening. All right, so you're sitting in the audience, slides through. We hear boundary lines, we hear setbacks, we hear communication, and there's a lot of layers to every single one of those conversations and logistics that go with it. And so I want to say thank you, actually. The board, Tom's the team who's gathered all this information, tried to make thoughtful decisions. There's a lot goes into that. In giving this update on this redistricting cultural team, I'm going to connect to something Jessie shared earlier. I almost wish I could have followed her earlier because she really hit the nail on the head. That as we process all this, what we can't forget as we process through all the logistics is that there is a human side to every aspect of this process. And we can't say that out loud enough. But just to remember, as we go through change, we talk about some of these unknowns and decisions to come. We've got staff that are processing a lot right now. We're getting ready to how do we navigate this change the best that we possibly can with our people in mind first and foremost. Our staff, our students, our families, and taking care of each other, our people organization first and foremost. So that really becomes the charge of this redistricting cultural team that's come to be, is to make sure that stays at the forefront as we process the logistics that are part of this process. So I'm excited to have the chance to give you another update tonight on that work and where we're headed next. So and again, just background again, I know I shared this at the forum, but the other thing I'm not going to miss an opportunity to do is to shout out our principals. This starts at the pre-K4 level in terms of the consolidation part of this work. And we are incredibly fortunate. And someone that came into the district last year, and they're out there, and I'm going to shout them out again. I see Patty Sotero from Center Street, Embry Bailey from Ridge Road. I think there's Liz Scaptera from Big Flats, and Kim Malone from Gardner Road. And a shout out to Patrick Patterson, who was part of these conversations last year at Gardner Road as well. And I would say again, we are fortunate. This group from the beginning, in addition to the day-to-day life of a building principal, have committed to approaching this as a team and talking about all of our Vorstead students together, all of our staff. How do we navigate this and take care of each other along the way? And so when I just put this slide up again, because when these conversations first started last year, the first question posed again was, as we get ready for September 2025, what do we need to have on the radar? It was a very open-ended question. And that's by no means the comprehensive list. When we started to plot out, and what we've talked about to this point, the system side is what quickly overwhelms. When you start to think about the implications of all the decisions tonight and what that sets in motion, but as a building leader, you get down to what does it look like when staff transition? What will the impact be on schedules? What will arrival and dismissal look like? And we can have a laundry list there. But as you process through that and you boil it down and you wait for that, we remind ourselves again that how are we going to take care of our people as we go through these transitions? How are we supporting our staff, our students, our parents and community, our leadership team as we navigate this journey together, and also keeping building identities and traditions that are long-standing in mind as well. And we throw that circle around because what we started with was we can't dwell on the unknowns. There's decisions to come, and when the time comes, we'll know what we're working with, and that goes in motion. But controlling what we can control, we can start with taking care of our people first. And that's where that conversation started, and that's when we chose to focus our energies on to start. And when we had that conversation, regardless of how this process plays out, when that information comes, in the end, the bottom line when we get to September 2025, how do we want our staff, students, and families feeling when we walk into school as communities that year? And in the words we landed on again, we want everyone to feel welcome, we want everyone to feel valued, a sense of belonging. And part of the collaborative team was more staff-oriented, as this team has talked, what does that mean for students and families? Part of the school community, part of the school family. So that whatever this change looks like, if we get those pieces right, the rest of the process we can trust is going to go smoothly if we let that piece first. So that little visual again up there was actually a concrete reminder to us when our brains went to process, stop. It's not within our circle of control right now. We'll get to that when the time comes. We'll get things on the radar. We're about culture and relationships first. So again, that really being in charge of this team as we go forward. And so throughout last year, again, just for some context, as conversations started with the principals, They came time to, so if that's where, starting with staff first, if that's where we want staff to land, what are the intentional things we can get on our radar and plan for to make sure that's where we're at by September 2025? Those weren't things we were going to sit in the room and say what we think staff need. You know, and so we allocated time in faculty meetings across, you see March, April, June there, to ask those questions of our staff. Here's what we want to make sure each and every one of you review when we land by September 2025. So we need to hear from you. What are the intentional steps that we can have on the radar and do to support us, regardless of how some of the X's and O's of this process ends up playing out? So that was a conversation that started in March that our building principals led to building up. We gathered information initially and had some ways we went about that in buildings. Then in April, we came back and we started to see what are some of the common themes that we're seeing show up across the pre-K4 buildings. That we might start to be more of our higher leverage moves. If we have these on the radar, we can have an impact with these. We gathered that information. And then in June, we came back again with a share of those common themes, but also part of that April conversation was asking staff, are we on the same page with why we do these things? So in June, we shared out the themes, and then trying to get to a common why so we're all on the same page. We tallied that up, and something that we shared with staff. The three things that we saw come up the most frequently across the buildings, and I share this because it's become the initial focus for this redistricting cultural team. The first thing we heard from staff was, we want to build in unstructured time to connect socially. Relationships first. You see those words in parentheses, those are there because when we use AI for some of this, you know, so when we put staff feedback in of why would we do this, the three words that came up the most were why, relationships, connections, and community. That's why we do that. Another concept that came up across those was exploring rebranding of schools. You know, there's conversation again of, if we have a building that's closing, what does that mean? Is their identity just disappeared and just assimilated into the other buildings as if dentistry never was? No one wants that. You know, and so this rebranding concept came up, and the why, to unite and unify us, the concept of a fresh start and a new culture. And then the third concept that came up most frequently was having time intentionally in the system to make sure team building and planning together is happening. And the three most common words for why there were for collaboration, curriculum, and planning. So we shared that out, like here were the common things, you know, with our staff. But then we hit kind of a pivot point because all of these conversations to this point were building based. And so if we start to take these concepts and think about how we move them into action, we need to start having conversations across the buildings and understand each other and gain from each other's perspectives to make the best decisions. You know, and again, we had the conversation, you can't put hundreds of people in a room and expect that a lot's going to get done. So this concept started to become a, how do we form a team that has cross-representation to take this to the next step? You know, in one piece, the kind of the mindset to that work, and we shared this with the community and staff forum, and I'll share it again, and this was part of our faculty meetings last year. As the principals met throughout the year to kind of debrief these faculty meeting discussions and co-plan together and have our messaging aligned, you know, one of those debriefs we came back to, and one of our principals, you know, was excited to share a reflection that came from their staff, and just kind of was a light bulb moment for us and said, you know, as we're kind of processing and talking through how do we navigate across the different buildings and what does this look like in this transition, a reflection from a staff member was, we've got to kind of shift our thinking and be intentional with our language. And stop thinking at it through the lens of what was our way in our building, their way in their building, and start to see this as an opportunity to think about a new way. You know, and as simple as that sounds, I think it's a really powerful concept and a way to frame our thinking as this goes forward. So that's something we continue to revisit and remind ourselves is how do we find the opportunity, you know, as a part of this transition, so again, to not feel like we're just one building here. You know, how is there an opportunity to move forward and bring the best of everyone combined and make us as united as one? That's the goal. So again, I kind of hit on this, that shift again to this redistricting cultural team. The goals were to establish a cross-representative group that was of a manageable size. So how do we have each building represented as part of this team? How do we have a range of goals on this team? Try to have a variety of perspectives, but again, keep it at a manageable number. So there was the opportunity for staff to express interest. We had an initial August kickoff date that was a full day. And I say that out loud because this is volunteer. So I want to just make sure that we understand what that means. That we had staff that came in on a summer day from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock for this work. And they know who they are, and I give them a thank you somewhere in this room. You know, Jess is one of them who's so good about the importance of the human side. You know, and I think we talked at our kickoff, these are individuals that we knew are not bringing personal agendas to these conversations. They're coming at this for the good of all students, all staff, as we navigate this together. And it's inspiring work, you know. And so, as that has started again, the initial focus has been on staff, knowing where this timeline is at, and some of the implications that are going to come fast and furious soon here for our staff, as some decisions are made. But knowing that it's going to more and more pull in the student and family lens, community as well, as this timeline progresses. So you see that, you see those same words again. And we, you know, this team was together for a full day today again. You know, we talked through those goals again of how we want our staff initially to feel welcome, valued, a sense of belonging. We talked today. These are the same things we want our families and our students to feel as well as change happens. So language we're going to continue to reinforce. That's really the goal now. We have these concepts we've gathered from staff feedback. This goal of this team is for recommending actual action steps now. When we look at that timeline, you know, and part of the timeline that's going to benefit to this team, what I think is worth mentioning here, there's a lot of uncertainty that causes stress, you know, for our staff. What's this going to look like? And I know from our team's lens, we've appreciated the intentionality of this timeline coming together and the details. It keeps us on point with where we're moving, but it is also, the hope is somewhat reassuring to staff because they need to know what the next steps are and how this is going to play out. The uncertainty, you know, that we heard a lot of, that causes stress and anxiety. So the goal, how can we give as much clarity to people as possible on what the next steps are and what they can expect? These are, we try to continue to do that every chance we get. So did some action steps today for awareness. I mentioned the August 20 kickoff that we had. And some of that, and that was the first time the group was together. Some of that was just getting to know each other as members from across buildings, establishing norms, going back to those 3 focus areas, and starting to draft recommendations. You know, and we left that day, you know, like we wish we would have got a lot farther. You know, that these are, as you mentioned, these are emotional conversations. It's about people. You know, so sharing the perspectives and learning for each other is powerful. 2 steps that came out of that I would just make the board aware of and that we're aware of as staff. As we had those conversations, and I think these are good examples. You know, there's a piece in that timeline of, as we start to, you know, figure out section numbers, you know, when boundaries are grade and whatnot, that's something that people are anxious to learn. And we'll have an idea of what internal transfer opportunities come up. I won't go into the weeds with that, you know, but we had the conversation of it. If there's some of our staff that have to make decisions soon about transfers, that's stressful. You know, and had an opportunity in that setting to share their feelings pretty openly with their colleagues from other buildings. And it was neat to just see kind of the understanding and the empathy that set in during those conversations. And so 2 action steps that even came from that. You know, for our staff at Center Street, this came from the team. You know, we're inviting them, if they would like, to have the option where we'll provide coverage and they can just go informally visit other buildings. If they feel like, I'd like to just kind of go get a feel. I've never been at the other 3 elementaries for some of them. Nothing we're required, but that was an ask that came. The team was very receptive to that idea. If that would be helpful, absolutely. And we'll work together, principals will work together to make it happen. We also talked about as another opportunity to just learn about each other's buildings from a staff perspective, but also what students look forward to in each building, how staff connect in each building. Could there be a kind of a brief survey we put out to staff to complete and give us more information to learn about the culture in each building that's going to help this team from a few different lenses. And so, you know, this is something that's going out. We processed again today. It's going to be a faculty team discussion coming up. But just to give the board an idea, questions like this, you know, what do you love most about your school community? Just letting people share. What do students most look forward to? How do you connect with other staff members? What makes you unique? And kind of getting that compiled and starting to see, you know, and learn about what do kids look forward to in each of these buildings, so that when we have these new way conversations, and you know, how do we maintain the traditions that have been long-standing and make the best experience possible for our kids, it's going to give us that wealth of information too, as well as help our staff learn a little bit more about each other. So just a couple of kind of concrete examples that were timely to share that's coming out of the thoughtfulness of this team. So you see some pictures up there. Those are literally from today. Thanks, Sam and I, for getting those and getting right in this presentation. But again, another full day's work with this team today. It really the kind of goal, just from a general sense, finalizing those initial recommendations from all of the staff, but also having some initial conversation and what we call the needs assessments today. Well, what's got to be on the radar? What are our concerns to have on the radar when we think through the student lens and the family and community lens? And so just kind of initial discussions there, and beginning the conversation of what would a process look like to explore rebranding. That was an emotional conversation today. A lot of perspectives around that, but there's thoughtful conversations happening, You know, and one takeaway from the team today was going back to our why, being clear about our why. And it's about our people. It's about how do we make sure this becomes an opportunity for us to continue to feel united, make sure everyone feels, you know, again, welcome, valued, sense of belonging as we go forward. That's the ultimate goal. You know, and I give kudos to this team that's volunteering their time to take care of, again, all of our students, all of our staff, and all of our families, and of course, as we go through this transition. So we look forward to more updates in the future. And I gotta thank the work of that team as we move forward.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap this up, just some updates since August 15th. Obviously, we've had a staff forum. We've had a community forum. At the staff forum, we had roughly about 16 to 19 individual staff members. Of course, a majority were probably from Center Street, and they asked their questions, which were sort of like what Joe had talked about, you know, how are we going to handle it, when will we know? One of the urgencies is they want to know as soon as possible so they can start their plan. In our community forum, we had roughly about 9 individuals show up. We had roughly 3 speakers. One was a parent of a student. We talked to that parent afterwards because she had concerns about busing. She was also given some information that I don't think was in the best interest of the district to alarm somebody about busing. But that's somebody's viewpoint, and we have reached out to the family to make sure that they meet with the actual facts of the district with our transportation center to assist them. They may want to make their own decision. We understand that. We've had another parent write us a letter similar to the same thing, but they're giving us information that the bus trips are going to be an hour or more to Big Flats, and that is not something that is factual. And it should not be talked about until we know the type of technology. In addition, we had some community forums that I've already members addressed that had their own concerns in regards to this, and I talked about them in the presentation, and some were posed as questions tonight in the community forum part. Second check-in, like I already said, with Tyler Technologies, again, they're moving forward. Honestly, they'll be able to move a lot rapider once they have the decision, because right now they're working on 4 options. And we're paying for 4 options when we really will only eventually need 1 or 2. So what that does is come to an educational-based recommendation for the Board of Education's redistricting decision. I've already given you my recommendation. I've also stated those recommendations in the community forum and staff forum. To date, I've received 3 comments. That's about it. Nothing has been about the start time. Mostly it's been about busing and discussions. As you know, in August, I gave the utilization of option B as my educational recommendation from me and my team because of several reasons of what we talked about, but primarily the balancing utilization between all the schools, and with also option B, 36% of Center Street goes to Big Flats, keeping as many Center Street students together as possible at Gardner Road, which is, I believe, this area right here, and that's all north of 86. And the reason why I think that's very educationally sound is those kids do play together, they stay together, and they don't really migrate under 86 into the residential areas, only by parents, and they'll still be able to do that. So that's the educational soundness of that, and trying to balance, as you know, we're not sending 100 and so many kids that we said at Big Flats. We're sending about 60 less, and we're sending about the same amount to Gardner Road, where the vast majority of Center Street boundaries are always naturally, probably should have always gone to Ridge Road, but the district was set up and divided that way for its reason. So that's the recommendation, educationally speaking, from a person with over 38 years of experience and my administrative team of why that's the most sound of these demographics. In addition, I've already stated in regards to the high school start time, you can go 7:20, you can go 8:40. Big thing is parents have to put their kids to bed. If a child has the ability to stay up later and sleep in, they will stay up later and sleep in for the most part unless the parent intercedes. Our students already arrive between 7:15 and 7:20 and wait in line just for the doors to open up at 7:25. So it's not much of a major change. Our big thing is where does the elementary, where does the middle school, intermediate school line up, which we will have to wait for Tyler Technology. So once this anchor time is set, whether it's early or after, The others just naturally fall in with the transportation. So these are the two decisions. Everything else is an operational decision of the district after that. So you have our recommendation of 7:20 as the recommended start time, and option B should be the considered recommended boundary based on educational determination. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That concludes our presentation. Hopefully this concludes our presentation on redistricting so that we can help our district move forward and our teachers, our staff, and our students know where they're going for the start of next year.
Yeah, thank you, and now's the time to discuss option A or option B and any questions people have. Yeah.
I'm agreeing with this. I think we probably have to go back.
I make a motion to just take a 3-minute break.
I'll hold you to 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
So we're moving to section 7, and I'm going to do it in this fashion. 7.02 is the redistricting boundary decision, and since the superintendent made a recommendation to go to letter B, I'll start the discussion by asking for a motion to approve letter B, and that will start the discussion. So can I have a motion for letter B as the redistricting option?
So moved. Second.
Inquiries, discussion, comments. Katrina?
Yeah, I have a question. So I thought we were going to be able to ask the questions about the presentation.
Right now.
Oh, so we're going to ask Tom all the questions now for the presentation and the other, well, this is our time.
Yeah.
Weren't you separated into two?
Yeah, he separated it into two. This is only on.
Only on option A or option B,
And
and
like the time as a separate application. So the motion on the floor is with respect
to
to.
redistricting. And do we approve letter B, or you can vote down the motion at the end of the discussion if you so choose.
So I was going to try to ask questions about some of the stuff with like the culture and some of the things about
The
busing.
agenda item is for redistricting. So do you approve A? Do you approve B? That's the agenda item.
Yeah, but I think things that were covered in the presentation related to redistricting would be.
Okay. All right. So, you want to ask Katrina?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was just taking a break because there were a lot of speakers that got up and they talked, and you guys were all here at the last board meeting, got to ask some questions, and so I just wanted to be able to ask questions about the presentation in general to get a little more understanding. So in regards to, Joe had made a comment about like how the internal transfer or staff and like the transferring, like about how is the internal transfer, how are they working, was a question that I had. Another question that I had was, during the presentation, talking about staffing and moving of staffing. I guess I was looking for a little bit more on how it is happening and like the changing of it, and then when you have the closing. So for example, a cultural piece might be when you close the street, all of the kids who are seniors and their senior walk. Like, where do we just not do senior walks anymore because of the hurt that it causes to the kids at Center Street? Or, you know, like, those were some of the questions that I had about the cultural piece. And then I had some questions about the busing. So I don't know if you want me to wait for them to answer and ask questions about busing after?
We're keeping track right now, so you can ask another question. I'll be responding.
Okay, then I had some questions about the busing and the bus times. So when we're talking about the 3-tier system, the 3-tier system, right now we're on a 2-tier system, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when you go to a 3-tier system, how many more, I guess I need to know what's the total number of buses we need for each system, like to be able to compare the two?
That will be determined by Tyler Technology once they go through the full process. They do not see that, we can have less buses and longer ride times. We can have more buses and shorter ride times. They're trying to hit the sweet spot with that, with our bus fleet that we currently have.
Okay, are we able to see any information that they've already worked on? Because you said that they have worked on both. Because you mentioned that they have been working on some things, like, so to be able to see what it is that they had worked on.
They have basically done superficial discussions within their department. They are just starting to set up and getting all data files to do the actual work because they don't want to overcharge us for doing work that we're not going to use. They have said already through their discussions in-house, there's no discernible cost difference between A or B. And they verified that again since the last time. And that's through their own internal mechanisms, not necessarily a document.
Okay, and then I had some questions about the special needs. How many special needs classrooms do we have at Center Street currently?
Tony, do you have that? I mean, we have some that are BOCES, so if we don't need BOCES, we'll tell BOCES they have to contract someplace else. But we have classrooms for all of our classes.
Okay, because my question...
You just have to wait, I got to turn that on.
Okay. Because my question was, I'm coming from a perspective of a former bus driver, and I know that special needs runs are kind of like all over the place with how they are and where they're set up, and I didn't know if or how those runs, if they are runs, were represented in the graphs that you were showing for times that are over and out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll help you just because we talked about that. First of all, they are not represented in there because special needs runs were running 2 hours or so. Now, at our last meeting, we challenged the bus drives. They have those runs under an hour and a half. They are trying to address them even further as we go through this, but that's because of the uniquenesses of certain programs and the routing that they have. But they recognize that 2 hours, and I think currently all of them are under an hour and a half, correct?
We've had 25 more students with IEPs added, so it is quite the struggle for us right now, only because the population has increased.
Yeah, and if we have to, we're going to add another bus route. It's that simple.
Okay. Okay.
Oops, sorry. These blue buttons.
Okay, so that was my question about that. And then when we were talking about the boundary lines, some of the things that didn't make sense to me in option B were when you look at, if you zoom into off Ladderbrook Road, there's a little cul-de-sac up there, Orchard Knoll, Ivy Lane. So in option B, that little neighborhood would be going to Big Flats. But what's weird to me about that is that people who live up on Monkey Hill Run or Crane Road or anything further up is going to go to Ridge Road. So why would we send the bus up to there and then have them miss that whole neighborhood and then keep driving down? And then there was another little cul-de-sac, Willow Street. They are also going to drive right past Willow Street and take the kids to Ridge Road, but then we're sending the bus over there to get the kids from those two little spots and move them to Big Flats. So that really didn't make a lot of sense to me, especially when I was looking at some of the lines where, like over by Pine Circle, for example. Pine Circle in that neighborhood off of 16 Road is actually in the town of Big Flats. So to me, logic-wise, people who live in the town of Big Flats should maybe go to the elementary school in their town. And so you move that little neighborhood, and then the people who are on Ladderbrook Road, which Ladderbrook Road, Monkey Hill Road, like that, I mean, that's like the furthest hill to the furthest hill. And then the other thing that I have is...
You've exceeded your 5 minutes. Does anybody else have...
Well, if I can answer, what was the first two real quick? I just wanted to get back to that. I just lost track of that. I think it was on staffing process and how it's going to happen, and then senior walk. The staffing process is governed by a MOA of the contract, so that's not between the board at this point. That is between the unit and us. We have worked collectively with the staff at Center Street as well as the HTA, and we will work with all of our collective bargaining agreements within the confines of the contract. Everybody knows that. That's what triggers that is actually tonight's meeting, because as soon as that happens, we have timelines to meet in that contract, which we're going to try to do it as quickly as possible so that we give people more time. When it comes to how do they go about moving, that's also covered by it. We have uniquenesses, but we'll try to do it by seniority to try to assist people, but we also have to make sure certifications and everything are met for those processes. When it comes to senior walk, that's going to be about 8 years away, and there still will be a Center Street and maybe an administrative office, but there will be a host of opportunities that either they can go to any school or they can come back and visit Center Street, and we can also invite. I mean, there's a lot of different things cultural-wise that you can do for the families at that point. I've seen, like in my former school district, the one elementary was closed, and for basically 12 years, every year, even though it was sold to the sheriff's department, every year the sheriff's department invited them back in conjunction with the school district to do their memory walks as well as retired teachers that actually work there as well. So it's still a part of our culture that we have to respect on the road. So hopefully I answered those. Did I miss anything?
Julie? Julie?
Okay, so first I want to thank Joe and your team for coming out, and for Joe for you putting together this team, and you guys and all the work you guys have done. I really do appreciate it. It was very great to see that, and it eased my mind in knowing you guys are way ahead of working on that, so thank you. Dr. Douglas, you mentioned in the presentation that if we have to have more bus runs, we will. Do we have more buses, or would that be an expense to the district?
We have some buses because we have to keep some alternates, but as we're going through any type of future purchasing, if we have to consider that, we have to consider it. But we just don't know until that's done with the 3-2. And then what happens is, you know, I'm going to try to get them the best they can be, but if I don't have enough buses, then I have to expand them. The state will accept up to an hour and a half. I don't want that. I think an hour and 15 is really pushing it, but if we can try to get to that hour, that's going to be the desired state rate.
Thank you. And then, if I'm correct.
Oh, sorry, I got to turn mine on. Go ahead.
Okay, and then if I'm correct, you are, what's on the table right now is you're proposing option B, but that does impact 40 students who are not Center Street students, where
Yes,
option
correct.
A
3%.
has the less impact on those students, correct?
Yes, option A has 24, option B has 40, but option B goes and distributes to all 3 schools, where option B only hits Garden Road and Ridge Road. If I can, just because I remember one of Katrina's questions on the boundary question, I think was on the outliers out by Bonnet Brook, Sing Sing, and so forth. The only thing I'm going to say is the demographers did their best and they did the bus study. Unfortunately, they are the experts in bus transportation. They are one of the experts, just like Tyler Technology. I know people will want their own way, but our boundaries are the boundaries that is recommended by them.
Christine?
So just a couple things. One, I love the cultural team. I think that is fantastic. I've heard from just in chatting with friends of mine just how much the staff really appreciates that, and I love everything I've heard about that. And I think, you know, making sure that we're taking care of our people. You know, we heard early on in the meeting tonight about, you know, change is hard. Change is hard for everybody. But change is harder for adults than it is for kids. You know, at the end of the day, you know, none of us like change, and the kids are going to take their cues from what they hear and see the adults saying and the way that the adults act. Just from a personal experience, we moved from Garden Road to Ridge Road when my youngest one was going into 2nd grade. And yes, that was a choice that we made, was to change houses. And he was scared. but it was how we talked about it, it was how his teachers talked about it, that made him excited because he realized, hey, when I go to intermediate school, I'm gonna have twice as many kids that I know. Because I'm gonna know kids from Garden Road and I'm gonna know kids from Ridge Road. So how cool is that, right? And I think the way we put spins on it, and I think the fact that this cultural team is in place, I've already heard staff talking that way. And I think that is really awesome. And we have a great staff here. I have no doubt that every staff member is gonna make this as easy as possible for the children. It's just we as the adults and we as the parents need to also make it easy for our kids. And as we look to vote, I am in favor of option B. I understand that there's 40 kids impacted by option B versus 24 by option A, but it does balance our schools. It balances the utilization within our schools better. So it gives us the opportunity, if developments are going to come up in the future, and if we're going to have building in different areas, we want to make sure that we have as much balance across our schools as possible. And I really truly believe our kids are going to thrive. There's so many more opportunities that they're going to be exposed to in getting to meet new staff and getting to meet new kids and getting to understand and see a new environment. It's just the adults, we need to kind of take a step back and start thinking positively about it.
Erin?
I just want to say that I agree with what Christine has said, but I also want to challenge the board to think holistically across our district and to think long-term. So this is something that is going to impact kids in the next couple of years, but we also have to think about the big picture here, right? How is this going to be impacting our district long-term? Not just, elementary schools, but middle schools, high schools, and not just now, but 10, 20, maybe 25 years from now, we have to look at that big picture. And the way that we approach it and the conversations that staff members have with students and with parents, to ease those concerns, but to say, in the short term, yes, it may be difficult, change is hard, but in the long term, we have to look at how this will benefit us as a district positively. And I don't want us to lose sight of that. And I think it's important to share that and to share that publicly for people to hear that and understand. Everybody will be impacted by this, but I think it's our approach and it's the way that we have these crucial conversations that are the most important.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to sound very repetitive of what these two ladies have said, but a big thank you to staff and principals and Joe and everybody. I don't want to leave anybody out that has worked so hard on this. And I'm so glad that, the district took the step to hire the demographer, to really look into it, somebody who had lots of experience. We stepped back and let somebody else take a look at it. My first child started school in the Worcester district back in the early 80s. And all three of my kids went through this district. And I have never found, and I worked for Corning, a more understanding, caring staff and group of teachers and principals. I have been a teacher myself, so I was a judge, and couldn't have been happier. And those people are still here, and they're still making the best for all of our kids. And I agree with what Christine said. I went through 2 episodes in Corning where schools were closed, and I was teaching. And it is difficult, and it is hard. And I remember as a teacher wondering, okay, am I going to get placed in another school? Am I going to give up my grade level? Well, the my's aren't the words to use. It's us and our, and we're together on it. And the other thing that I noticed in those 2 situations, it wasn't the children. They managed. They were fine. Maybe a little scared here and there, but after the first couple of days and special welcoming events, more of the negativity came from the parents. And that did not help anyone because the children heard it at home and they brought it to school. And it was talked about
and we got over it. So please keep that in mind, members of the community. We have to be positive as well to make this happy. And again, a big thanks to all of you who have been working on this.
Liz?
I'll echo all of the kudos and things, but I do want to point out a couple things that really touched me. I love the unstructured time to connect. That sounds like no forced icebreakers and no explaining your why over and over again. I think that was a great idea. So I appreciated that. Joe, when you said we're going to unite and unify, and we can bring the best of everyone together, it really resonated when you spoke about uncertainty creates stress, and our staff deserve, and I really liked that word, deserve it. We need to make a decision for them. I actually was a student when Corning did their redistricting and closing of buildings, and I will tell you as a student, it was all about the parents. We as students we were excited to meet new people. It was scary. There was some fear going on, but it was all the parents. My family was very supportive and excited to meet new people, and that's how I approached it. I agree. I hope that everyone approaches this in a positive light. I've shared this story with Ms. Malone, but when I told my little that Mr. Patterson was leaving and that we had a really cool new principal coming, he didn't let me say new principal. He was like, yes, there'll be no principal. Then I had to explain that, no, there'll be Ms. Malone, and this is going to be great. But he was just excited for the change. So while change is hard, I will be in favor of option B.
Luke?
Okay. I wasn't here at the August meeting because I was on a planned vacation that I planned in January before I became a board member. So I guess can everybody hear me? Okay. So I'm going to still read the letter I wanted to read back then. I wanted to say that I do appreciate Joe and your team and what you're doing for the Homestead community. I know all my kids went to the school district. I know what Horseheads is made of. We've been here over 40 years. And it's a great place. And we want to continue to keep it a great place. First, before I read my statement, I wanted to read it in August. How many people are on the redistricting culture team at the moment?
16.
16, and you plan to add more?
Yeah, so, well, part of, do you want me to take that?
Oh, go ahead. You gotta cut you off for a minute. When my blue button goes on, everybody else's, I guess, turns off. So there you go.
So one of the things that I think I hit on was a lot of this conversation is based on timing with the timeline was staff centered first. So the makeup of this team, the volunteers that join are existing staff members. They wear a lot of different hats. We do have parent stakeholders on the team. They're also staff right now. As the conversation shifts more and more to students and community, one of the conversations we're having is, as certain conversations happen, how do we bring in opportunities for student voice, for parent voice, and community voice along with that?
And definitely your staff.
Oh, he's got to turn his on. Yeah, once you turn yours off, that comes on.
Thank you.
Okay, because we definitely need to take care of our staff and our parents. And I was on the board when we closed Sing Sing and made it, and people still have hurt feelings from that. It doesn't go away. And I don't know how you can change that from occurring, but this is what I was going to say in August and I wasn't here. I feel there needs to be other options besides A and B. We're doing the same thing we did back when Sing Sing was made a 5-6 building, putting families from buildings being closed where they fit best. And this is not fair to students or the families. I'm very concerned this will affect families when they try to sell their homes and their elementary school is approximately an hour and a half plus ride to get to their location. Option A is dividing the village of Horseheads, as we've discussed, that won't be the streets. Option B, students from Orchard Knoll, Ivy, to me, is bizarre that they would go to big flats. Neither option is doing what is best for the students of the Horseheads School District. All students that are currently in Center Street should be going to Bridge Road or Gardner Road. None of them should be bused to Big Flats. People who buy homes in the community, who live out in Big Flats or in rural areas, expect long bus rides, and they're aware of where they are. Can you imagine now that they're buying a house off of Miracle Mile or on South Main Street, and the realtor tells them, no, you're not going to Garden Road or Ridge Road, you're going to Big Flats, because Garden Road or Ridge Road would technically be closer. Closing a school means families in the district might have to be moved, not just the families in the building that is being closed. And I've heard this more than once tonight, oh, it only affects 40 kids from Ridge Road or 40 kids from whatever. But those numbers change because of those 40 kids, 10 of them might not go next year to this district, they might. So these are approximate and they do change. So it could be, you know, only 25 of those 40 kids might be affected. We really don't know. And I think those were like two important things. But thank you for what you're doing in it's not recognizing kids.
Dan?
So I would echo the comments in terms of the wonderful work that Joe, the team you're leading, has been, that work that has gone on and all of the effort being put in to make this as successful as possible. I think it's compelling to hear from my fellow board members who experience this as teachers, as students, and I think the point that while difficult, and I don't for a second minimize how difficult it is, we have resiliency and we have the ability to overcome it. And I'm struck by, I didn't grow up here, I'll admit that, I've lived here now for almost 18 years. But frankly, when you look at the current zones, you could look at those and say, why the heck is this street in this, and why is that street in that, right? You can, the point is that you could always find that one street on the margin, right? And say, why isn't that included? But then we never make the decision and allow us to move forward, as we heard so eloquently stated during board public comments earlier. That is what the staff and the district need from us. I'm not a professional demographer. I'm not a professional educator. I don't profess to know more about either of those subjects than the people who are professionals. And so I believe that we have, based upon the opinions of those professionals, the best options in front of us in terms of A and B. And I don't, as I said, there are always questions about where a line is drawn, but it's based upon all of the criteria that they're trying to take into account. I do think one of the compelling items of B, as you alluded to, Dr. Douglas, is that it keeps that sort of core of courses together that will enable students who are in the same neighborhoods to play together, hopefully stay together. I think that's a positive factor of B. I recognize it does impact slightly more students than A, but we've addressed that. And given in the totality, the recommendation of B in terms of how it tries to make schools consistent in their utilization and all the other criteria, while again, I don't for a second doubt that it will have an impact on people. I strongly believe with all the work that's being done, we can come through that and be even stronger on the other side of it. So I can support option D as it's been presented.
So related to bus time, so one, I'm feeling a little bad for Big Flats. Big Flats is a wonderful school, it has wonderful staff, it has wonderful families that go there, and I feel like there's been so much talk about, oh, well now they're gonna have to go to Big Flats. It should be, wow, they get to go to Big Flats, right? Like, so I think we need to change the way we're saying that, and all of our elementary schools have wonderful staffs, wonderful buildings, and again, my kids didn't go to Big Flats, but Big Flats is the reason why we moved to Horseheads, because when we were moving here, we toured Big Flats to learn more about Horseheads. And it was the staff at Big Flats at the time that helped us make our decision to move to Horseheads versus move to Corning. So thank you, Liz, and the rest of your staff. But related to the bus times, I think we're making assumptions that those families that live in those areas on the other side of 86 that will now go to Big Flats we're making the assumptions that because they live further from Big Flats than they do from Gardner Road or Ridge Road, we're making incorrect assumptions that their bus runs are gonna be longer, right? You know, the bus could potentially pick them up right on 86 and boom, be in Big Flats quicker than they could potentially be in Ridge Road because of all the other stops they're gonna have to make in between. So I think the fact that we're making comments and saying things about hour and an hour and a half bus rides for these families that now will have to go to Big Flats, I think we're putting the cart before the horse because we do not know that. It's an assumption, and I think it potentially could be an incorrect assumption. And I feel like, you know, Big Flats is getting a bad rap because of it, and it's just making me sad about that. So that's it.
So,
When I say, well, they have to go to Big Flats, it's not anything bad. I know Liz very well, she knows me, I know all these principals, and I'm not giving a bad rep to any school. And I don't like that you're talking like I'm doing something wrong, or you're trying to correct me because of how I speak, and I don't really appreciate that. I have the right for my opinion, and whatever the vote is tonight, we go forward with the vote. But I don't like being chastised for how I say something. I think it's inappropriate. Thank you.
So just, I wasn't trying to chastise, it's just, it wasn't just tonight. There's been multiple comments made by various people over the past several months since we've been talking about this. So, you know, I apologize if my tone was harsh. It's been a buildup over time. And I just want to make sure that we have all the facts as we move forward and we're not making assumptions. So I apologize. I wasn't trying to talk negatively and harshly directly towards you. So I apologize.
Trina?
Okay, and then so from another perspective to say that, you know, it's going to be a quick trip right down the highway. Every day putting a bus full of kids on a highway is a risk because buses travel at 55 miles an hour and the rest of the automobiles in the world travel at 65. And just 2 days ago, we saw what happened on the highway. And I would hate for a tractor trailer to hit a bus full of kids. I would hate for any car to hit a bus full of kids. That's another reason that I don't think that some of these zone options should be going to Big Flats because I think it's a risk. I think it would have been better if we would have been able to talk to a demographer more than one time to ask him, hey, he only came here one time to talk to us, and that was when none of the roads were able to be read. So we could say to him, hey, you know, I feel better, or we collectively as a board feel better saying to parents off of the Miracle Mile and parents from under the bridge, we feel more comfortable busing your student on a 40-mile-an-hour street, and maybe we're sorry to the parents over at Pine Circle and those roads, or maybe even Sing Sing or Hickory Grove or wherever it's close. We are sorry, but it's safer for your child to be traveling the back road of Sing Sing over to Big Flats, and every kid will still end up with the same bus time. But we didn't even get that opportunity to do that or to have the discussion. We didn't get to have a discussion about the cost between both of them. We don't know for sure what the bus runs are. You might feel comfortable as a member of the board to say, I feel good with option B, without knowing the cost, without knowing in 10 years, 5 years, however long from now, a bus full of kids gets hit on the highway. You might feel comfortable saying, yeah, sorry you can't cross under the bridge to go play with your friends just on the other side of the highway. I cross it all the time on walks. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I had stated at the very first meeting, I would like to see if there was an option C. And tonight, this resolution doesn't give any board member the option to vote no against both. And it should. We should be given the option to say, we like option B, yes or no. We like option A, yes or no. That's not even presented to us. I don't think we're doing our community or the kids any favors by not knowing for sure the answers to the question. I don't like to put the cart before the horse. I don't like to guess. I like to have information, black and white, in front of me to look at, so I know. Because I would like to
Katrina, your
motion.
3 minutes is up.
Oh.
And that's all, and you only get to speak twice, so those of you that have spoken twice have spoken. Dan, I'm sorry. Excuse my point.
No, I took me out collecting myself. So first of all, just as a point of order, if we vote down the motion, Katrina, just so you understand, if we vote down the motion, it means we don't adopt option B, but it doesn't mean we automatically adopt option A. I think we have to separately vote for option A. That's not.
Yeah, you had another vote if you
Right.
vote this.
So you're just, that's not correct in terms of you could vote no against both options, to be clear. Secondly, and I appreciate your experience as a bus driver, but I think what you just said doesn't do service to our bus drivers, to our transportation department. Mike, there are kids on the highway every day on buses. My children have gone to sporting events all over upstate New York on Dorset buses. Could an accident occur? Sure it could. It could occur when I drive home tonight from here. But it's a scare tactic to suggest that because we're going to have buses that might go on the highway, okay, parents, let's hope your kids don't get in an accident. I'm sorry, I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's a scare tactic, and I don't think that does service to our district in terms of the professionals of our drivers and what we already do every day. And then lastly, I hear what you say about wanting information. I would submit to you, we have information in front of us. I think we have a lot of information, and it's gone through in the presentation, and so just to the extent, your comments were to suggest that there's those of us who are willing to make a decision don't have information, I would disagree with that.
My second turn.
All right, good.
Okay. I would also agree with what Dan said in the aspect that I do feel we have a lot of information. Although, Katrina, I want you to understand that I do hear you and what you're looking for in other options for busing routes and the scare of buses being on the highway. However, I do agree that accidents can happen anywhere, anytime. If we choose not to make a decision, we're doing a disservice to the community as well. We've already invested all of this time, energy, money, resources into, we know the building's closing, we have to move forward. We have two valid options in front of us. I prefer option A. I will decline on option B. I like the lower impact to less students. But again, we're a human here. So we have to decide and give direction to the staff who's waiting on us.
This will shock everyone. I don't have any expertise in driving, but I trust. Sorry, I should pause for a minute, but I trust our transportation department to keep our children safe. They love our kids more. I feel like Ms. Lisa and Mr. Tony some days like my kids more than I do. But I trust them. I put my babies in their hands every single day, and I have absolutely no hesitation doing that. And to the living in the what if, I live in today. Tomorrow is not promised to any one of us. Just like Dan said, I could walk out and get hit by a car. I cross Sing Sing every day to walk up here. One of those days I could get hit by a car. But I can't not go to see my children by making that choice. I can't live in fear, and I, again, will not live in fear.
Okay. So I guess I get to speak. All right. And I'm not going to reiterate everybody's comments because I would go with option B. But the one thing that offended me was the idea if we put a bus on the highway, then there can be an accident. Well, that's true. Any car on the highway could be an accident. But I spent 34 years on a school bus as a coach, traveling to Rochester, to Albany, all over the state, Buffalo, and I always felt safe. I always felt the bus drivers did a great job. I always was frustrated that they had to go 55 miles an hour. I would always be saying, I won't tell if you don't tell. We speed it up a little, all right?
Don't tell Rich that.
Well, but I trusted those. So to say, you know, somebody could be in an accident, any of us could be in an accident on any given day. So that was the most offensive of the whole discussion. I can see if you disagree with A or B. And then the only other thing I think is Dan had a good point. We're really discussing at the margins, why is one street in one place and another street not? Well, if we reconfigured it and went with another option, somebody else would say, well, why is my street, you know, and that. So I think we've been given by professionals the two best choices, and I'll call the question. All in favor of option B, say aye. Raise your hands, because I think we're going to have to count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I would make 6. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. And that's 9, so there should be no abstentions. Motion passes 6-3. All right, so now we go to 7.03. And this is to redistricting the high school start time. And since the superintendent made a recommendation to start the high school start time at 7:20, or is it 7:25?
Right in there.
All right, so the 7:20, 7:25 time, we'll make a motion to do that, and then we'll have the discussion as we did on item 7.02. So can I have a motion to start the high school at 7:20, 7:25?
So moved.
Second.
All right, inquiries, discussion, comments. Sue?
First, I just want everyone to know that I'm sitting with my hands like that, not because I'm disgusted, but because I'm very cold. You ain't got to figure out how to keep these clothes. When I come to, I freeze my butt off. I sweater around my lap and look. Okay, now I'll go back to my comment, but I just want everyone to understand that I'm trying to get warm, but I can't. In the August meeting, I know when I watched the video, someone asked, did you find out what times other districts start? Because we've had BOCES forever, and I'm not sure why the urgency of changing the time is changing it back to half hour. What the urgency of that is, I don't understand this.
The reason being is we lose educational efficiency with our staff at bookends. So basically, a teacher is supposed to work 3 full staff periods. We have teachers working 2.5, which limits some of the educational opportunities for our students either on the front or the back end. Elmira starts at 8:40 to 11, but they have a lot of students that also have to get out and miss classes at the end of the day. Most of the schools somewhere don't have that because they're not on block scheduling. The block scheduling causes an 80-minute dynamic that causes that shift, so that's why we're either 8:40 or 7:40. Oh, let me turn, there we go.
Okay, thank you. I was on the board with really intensive scheduling. I'm old.
Wonderful.
Oh, see, you were
Yes,
there too.
I lived through it as well.
You were there too, but you taught my kids.
Julie?
You're one of the greats.
Okay. I will say that I support the 8:40 start time, and I'm going to cite some facts that I received from John Hopkins Sleep Institution, John Hopkins Sleep Institute,
Yeah, I know what.
Sleep Research Society, Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, and the Journal of School Health. So high schoolers and teens go through, as they're going through puberty, their circadian rhythm shifts, and it's harder for them to go to sleep at night. So the 8:40 allows for them to align better with their natural sleep studies, or sleep cycle, excuse me.
Studies have shown that that actually is linked to better memory, attention, and problem-solving skills. It could potentially reduce tardiness. I'm not sure what our tardiness percentage is, but it could reduce that. Additionally, it decreases anxiety and depression that's driven from sleep deprivation. Excuse me. Better engagement, and they're less emotional. Now, I'm not an expert in any of these fields either. When I went to school, my senior year, it was shifted to 7:20 start time, I believe. So I'm a product of that, and it was perfectly fine. I was also a three-sport athlete, and so I got home late at night and was able to get up early in the morning. But I will say that I don't know if I had as much homework as some of these students do have these days. And having a high schooler and seeing the amount of work that they still do have to put in, I potentially look at it and think if they're getting home late from an athletic event or another event, that maybe having that extra time to sleep in the morning would be beneficial. So that's why I sought out some help from these great sites. That's all I have to say right now.
Julie, I appreciate that. I've been cited by the Johns Hopkins study several times. One of the things is studies will say whatever you study, just like any research. They don't give you the generalizability of it because that's usually the weaknesses of any study. The hard part is like I said up there, it takes a parent to address that issue. In other words, the Johns Hopkins study says you should have roughly 9 hours of sleep in your circadian rhythm. If we started at 8:40, and this is the hard part because it applies even if you go early. At 8:40, at 7:40, when they would say an hour bus run, right, that they've got to get up to get on that bus run, so they're up at 6:40. So if you count 10 hours back and 9 hours back from there, they have to go to bed at 9:40. None of our students are ever going. I mean, right now, I know what my son wants as a start time, but, you know, the hard part is it does wear. So that's sort of the fallacy in the study. I agree with the study. I agree with all of it. But it's got to be some of the control that we don't have. That's the difficulty. Will our kids get back later because we go later in the school? Yes, they won't get out to their athletic. So it's a double-edged sword. That's why we start at 7:55 right now. The doors open at 7:25. Our parents are here at 7:20. We're pretty much bringing the buses in almost at the same time. We start our buses for the high school about 6. That's what we're hoping to still be able to do even with the 7:20. But thank you. I know that one.
Christine?
So just clarification, so the recommendation, as you said, was from you and your team, was staff at the high school part of that discussion and kind of, what does the high school staff think?
We have the discussion with the unit, not necessarily with the staff. The unit has been apprised of this all throughout. Even at our faculty forum, the time did not come up. Do we have tardiness now? Yes. Will the same kids be tardy later? Most likely. But our job is to try to work with those to minimize that. I don't know anybody that wants to get up early except kindergarten kids, but putting a kindergarten kid out at 6 o'clock can be detrimental too. So you have to look at both of them. The big thing is in the educational piece is the educational piece, the sports piece, the loss of education time, as also well as the possible child caring time for families. That's why our educational premises around.
So it's hard. I don't have a student in school anymore, so I don't have that perspective. But I just remember having students that had to get out early every time they had an away sporting event, right? And that was stressful, particularly depending on the class, right? And if it was one of their more difficult classes and then they were trying to have to make work up. So that's difficult. So I like the idea of minimizing that. I also like the idea that students have more opportunity to have a job after school if they get out earlier. I know you mentioned about older siblings being home for younger siblings, but even high school students being able to babysit for neighbors and other people, I think that's beneficial as well. So I don't have a real passion either way, but just based on all of that, I'm leaning more towards, I would vote yes for the 7/22.
Aaron?
When I started teaching at Horse Heads back in 1997, we had a very early start time of 7:20 as well. And, you know, I will say this, an earlier start time when students missed the bus, it gave more of an advantage for parents grumbling to bring their child to school. With a later start time, it will be more difficult for parents to work through that and to get a ride for their child to school. Therefore, it's more likely that that child would end up missing a full day of school if they end up missing the bus. I will say this though, I am in favor of the earlier start time, but in saying that, I think at the building level, and I know that building leaders will address this and take care of it, there will be some concerns as far as the scheduling of things throughout the day. One in particular, and I know Chris is nodding her head, you know, are our arts, because our ensembles generally take place between, you know, period 5, 6, and being very well associated with BOCES schedule as being a former principal of BOCES. I can understand that students oftentimes had to make difficult choices of, am I going to be able to participate in an ensemble, you know, during an AM and a PM, and previously, as we are currently right now, we were able to manipulate on the BOCES side, you know, as well as we could for our New Vision students or for our CTE attenders to allow them to attend as many ensembles as possible in the arts. And that may become a difficulty if we shift to an earlier start time. So I would really encourage, and I know that they will, for our building principals to take a really good look at that scheduling-wise and see what is most advantageous for our students, whether it means we change the time of ensembles, you know, and maybe it's not a 5, 6, maybe it's a period 1.
Just so that you know, that is a discussion we've been having the past year, because our numbers are going down because people have to make that choice, and the more we can separate them throughout the morning and afternoon, might be able to allow the BOCES students that go off a greater opportunity. There may have to be some choices between like 2 or 3, but it is something that they're working on as we go through this.
And
Oops, sorry.
that's okay. And I'm aware of that. I just wanted to speak that out as something to, you know, a thought, that we have to think about these things and consider them. But I am in favor of the earlier start time because of many of the advantages that it will give to our students and parents. Thank you.
Good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Dan?
So I'm personally in favor of the later start time, but obviously I will support whatever the consensus of the board is. I think the information that Julie cited is important. I'd like to briefly read something from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Recognizes insufficient sleep in adolescents as an important public health issue that significantly affects the health and safety as well as the academic success of our nation's middle and high school students. Although a number of factors, including biological changes in sleep associated with puberty, lifestyle choices, and academic demands, negatively affect middle and high school students' ability to obtain sufficient sleep, the evidence strongly implicates earlier start times before 8:30 a.m. as a key modifiable contributor to insufficient sleep as well as circadian rhythm disruption. So I think there's further scientific evidence suggests the later start time is better. I also, and I understand the criteria that were established, but I think, you know, we don't have any quantifiable data about whether in fact it actually would give students additional after-school work time or how many students may have to go home and care for a sibling. In fact, those two are internally inconsistent because if you have to go home and work, care for a sibling, you don't have after-school work opportunities. So they're not irrelevant criteria, but I don't think that we have compelling data on which to base a decision with respect to those. Fairport starts at, just recently announced they're gonna start at 9 a.m. next year. Corning starts at 7:55. Elmira starts at 8:40. Binghamton starts at 8. Vestal starts at 8. Maine Enwell starts at 7:40. And so this idea of like learning loss in the afternoons because of athletic contests, I know I've had kids have to get dismissed early, but most JV and varsity events are happening 5, 6, 7 p.m. And if the schools we're participating against start roughly the same time we do, I don't see really how that, you know, they're gonna have to start later. So just, I don't see the data there in terms of it being compelling. So I will support, frankly, I'd rather leave it at the current time versus go to the earlier. So if that were an option, I'd do that. But in lieu of that, I would be more in favor of the later start time.
Trina?
Sorry about that. So as a student who went through the 7:20 a.m. start time, I can tell you I had Mr. Browning for anatomy and physiology, second period, and I slept every day for the first half of his class. And he probably wasn't so happy with me. I mean, the second half I got a lot of information, but early start time, not so great. It was great for my little brother. He functioned totally different. You know, he got us to celebrate the school, no problem. So I've been reading the book, The Anxious Generation, and it talks a lot about, you know, sleep and the importance of it, especially when children are going through puberty. So for me, given these two options, I don't know the impact of what it's going to have on the start time for 5, 6, 7, 8, because the book talks a lot about how those kids, your middle schoolers, your intermediate people, are the ones who really need the most sleep. And then high schoolers need it after that, but they've already gone through it. So if that means that we're putting our intermediate and our middle school kids way earlier because we're trying to finagle bus runs, I don't think that the later start time is better. I think later start time is better in general for kids, you know, sleep factor wise. I can appreciate what Aaron was saying with the logistics about programming. That was something that also struggled with me. That's why I didn't do band, because I was a BOCES kid. So I did choir because that was my other half that I could do. And that's what I stuck with. So I feel like not enough information to be able to make a real definitive decision. I would need to see how is this impacting our elementary schools? How is this impacting families bringing their kid to school? I would need to be able to see all of it and say, okay, now I can make a decision. Because right now, I would vote no for both options because I would like to see more information. I don't know how dire the start time is necessarily to some of the comments tonight that was made about the staff and how to help move them forward. I think that it would be helpful to hear from all of the, from as many people as possible, their inputs, community members, maybe send out a survey, how do their kids feel, like gather more information and have a little bit more discussion about it before we just pick the time. That's my thought.
Katrina, the start time is required because they've got to anchor one of the schedules. Because you brought up a good point. The earlier start time if high school goes earlier, middle intermediate school or elementary has to either go second or third. Right now, just the initial, just high-level discussion, they believe that most likely the elementary would go in the middle slot and the middle school, intermediate school would go in the third slot. They still have to go through that full situation, but they need one to anchor. If the high school goes later, then middle school, intermediate school, or the elementary is going early. I mean, we aren't going to be asking for middle school to go to 10 and elementary to go even later. So that's why this is the anchor time, whether it's early or later, then the others have to fit within that dynamic.
Wait, so just to bounce back real quick before we forget. So if you've had conversations, what are the hypothetical start times then for the intermediate and for the elementary?
They don't have those. They have to run the buses to find out what those would end up ultimately being. Then what happens is, as you know your each level, you can try, if you put more buses on the road for each of the layers, you can compact your start times. If you put less, you have to spread them out. But that's a sandbox issue, that they have to have one to start. That's the dilemma. You can't have the chicken and egg and get all the information on what the chicken's gonna look like. You have to make some decisions, and that decision anchors it. That's why the high school is the logical one, because it is tied to BOCES. BOCES isn't changing. For us, 720, 840, we're giving you a best educational understanding. Does it matter to me if it's 840 or 720? No. Educationally, on the premise of what we've talked about, that's why our recommendation's there. But no matter what, based on those, the other two fill into the other slots once they can start doing the final boundary and start. Oops, sorry, forgot the button.
That's okay. So, I mean, couldn't the discussion be, okay, we leave the high school exactly where the start time is now, and 5, 6, 7, 8 is going to be bused at the 8:40 time slot?
No.
Like flip-flop?
The reason why is the high school has to have an 80-minute period. We are losing financial and educational opportunities for our kids by having half a period. It is contractually limited. A teacher should be teaching the full classes, not a half class and taking an extra half class off. So?
Right now, I believe the middle school starts about 7:40. Don't they start?
7:55-ish. They're almost on the same time as the high school.
Okay. And then our elementary is 8:25.
Roughly 8:25, 8:30.
Right. So if you have a two-tier system, way over here.
Right.
So I'm off again.
You go up.
Here, everybody just looking. Okay, so, I mean, you're not looking, I don't think we're looking at trying to start elementary at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would think they'd be around the same time frames that they are now, even with a 2 or a 3. I don't know why we need a 3, but, I mean, we haven't got the data or the facts. So, right now we start, okay, hypothetically, 7:50, about the same time the high school, and then elementary is 8:25.
Yeah, and that's the problem, it's too close together. That's why buses don't get where they're supposed to be all the time. Just like the elementary schedule is almost an hour less than the secondary. Next year, that all changes, that's contractually negotiated. Our students are going to get about 640, 650 to 7-hour educational day at the elementary, which will help. What Tyler has said is 3-tier is the most efficient bus route, no matter what, because you can use multiple buses on different routes over your 2-hour time period. What happens is, depending on those routes and the closeness of your times, like hypothetically, say you're at 7:20, when can the middle school start? Say the middle school is 7. Say it's 30 minutes off. Well, both of the buses for middle school and high school and intermediate school are out on the road. But once they drop off, they're all available for the elementary schools, which can shorten their time. So that's why the 3-tier is usually preferred. But you have to get your start times separated. Once you have a start time anchored to what we're talking about, if it's at 8:40, then the elementary intermediate is going to be before 8:40. How early? It all depends. Could it be a half hour between each? Like in Bethlehem, where I was at, they had a start time of 7:30. The middle school started at, I think it was 7:57 or 7:55, and their elementaries, it was very easy. They started at 9 o'clock because everybody started at 9 o'clock up there. It didn't, I can tell you, it didn't need to start at 9 o'clock because the buses were available. So that's what Tyler does, is try to give us the best options for the start time. And then if we have more buses that can put on, the bus times can contract a little and get closer together, especially if our educational times are the same amount. Our real problem right now is the educational times are not the same amount. So you have a 7-hour day and a 6-hour day, and if the buses drop off at 7:25 and have to be at the elementary at, I think what is it, 8:15, and then in the afternoon, they have to pick up at 2:25, but be at the high school for 3, there's not enough time for them to get out and back because they're offset. This will partially take care of it, but we need Tyler to do it. They need one start time for the high school, then everything starts either way, either after or before.
Dan?
This is my second, to be quick.
I think the more I sit here, I think Katrina makes a really compelling point in terms of the fact that I understand the rationale, right? You've got to pick one to start somewhere. But I guess the question is, now that we have option B selected, would it be possible to say table this motion until next month, have Tyler do some initial work to say, early start time, this is what the rest of the schools would look like, late start time, this is what the rest of the schools would look like. Because it is really hard to make a decision without knowing how the impact on the elementary and the middle and the intermediate. And so I guess I'm wondering, would we be able to do that under our contract with Tyler? Is that, would we be able to continue on with the timeline that we have for redistricting if we were to table this motion until next month? Because I think it'd be really helpful to have that additional information if it's possible to get.
I can't estimate that because honestly, we have to allow them about 3 months to be able to do this work. That's the hard part. They've got to play with every possible option. That's why they want the anchor time. And our anchor time, just so you know, our anchor time is really just BOCES. So I can have them work both, but if you commit to one and then if you wanted to commit to the other, they can do both, but it's just extra cost.
Well, that's my question, because I understand, I know our contract was like a not to exceed, and I don't think we had spent, last time our last meeting, you said we'd only spent a portion of the contract cost.
So the contract was approved for $35,000 that included an estimated 200 hours worth of work. With the work they've done to date, actually we've spent just shy of $4,000 to date with the work, the preliminary work they've done so far, looking at the scenarios. So there's plenty of, we haven't really dipped into that yet.
Thank you.
Good.
I would want to know, Katie, how, those 200 hours, we obviously signed a contract for 200 hours, thinking we'd use most of that with one plan. So, 2 questions I have, and then I have some comments. What would a 90-day delay do for all of this, big picture-wise? Teachers being able to make a plan, families being able to make a plan, and our timeline to move forward. What does that look like? Because September 2025 is going to be here, whether we move the goalpost or not, or move further down the field, it's still, we have to have everything in place by September 2025. So I just want to know, one, what would that look like financially before we do that? And then 2, what would that look like timeline-wise? And I don't know that you can answer either of those right now. And then I have
I do want to appreciate that. There's a time factor involved with building the school schedule. So determinations for students and the schedules that the classes they can take will start happening. Of course, catalog goes out in December. By January, seniors are starting to meet. Through February with their counselors. We have to have a schedule in place that would determine bookends or no bookends. So we do have a time factor. I just want to make sure for the high school that's a concern. A 90-day would kill us as far as a routine of being ready for next school year. December is key to get out a course catalog and have students start to know what they want to prepare for. So that's a D-day for us on a backwards design. Can that be moved a little bit? Sure, but there's a reason why it's at that time frame. It's been that way for years because that's what's needed to make it work.
You have a comment on this?
So I also was a 3-sport athlete. According, I believe we're at 725. I did appreciate being able to very, very rarely have to leave early. Usually Maine and well were the games you had to leave early for. As a 3-sport athlete, And though my physique would not lead you to believe this, I was a runner. And running in the dark, or as it gets darker, especially in the winter months, was pretty scary. So the less you can do that, I think a safety factor is important to keep that in mind. I did want to ask one more question. Todd, at some point you mentioned a 3-tier busing system would allow us to empty a building in the event of emergency.
Yeah, the biggest piece about that is our middle school and intermediate school are on 2 separate schedules and have 2 separate bus schedules. We cannot officially empty out that building without having a double bus run. We don't have the buses and so forth. By having the middle school and intermediate school, which is 5th to 8th grade, on the run, if there's ever an emergency, our transportation department will be able to handle the whole complex. No different than they can handle big flats all at once. Center Street. If we had to empty out the whole district, it's going to take a long time.
And then just one final. And I just wanted to articulate that I would be in favor of the earlier start time.
Good.
Tom mentioned when Dan had referenced if we could have more time, you said you needed 90 days or they needed 90 days to put another option together for us, or if we were to say to them what would it look like now that we've chosen option B for the redistricting.
You don't think they do is 60 days?
Okay.
The hard part is we're going to try to push them as fast as possible, but no matter what, you get into the intricate details of, okay, say all of a sudden elementary is at 9 o'clock, and I have to say, I don't want elementary at 9 o'clock, what do we have to do? Then they have to restart the whole process all over. So the big thing is by having that one time, we can actually start working because we already know that we have schedule time and scheduling set, but then we've got to try to coordinate it with whether or not we need more buses and hiring. The quicker we can do that and get it out to parents is our desire, because parents ultimately at the elementary are going to have to find childcare. And with new schedules, new times, new work commitments, they want that as soon as possible. So you don't want to sit there and develop it and then have another month or 2 debate on what that time is, because time is really becoming of the essence, as Tony said. Now, could you? Yes. But the whole point is we're trying to give everybody as much notice as possible.
Okay, so what time does elementary start right now?
Between 8:15, 8:25, and 8:35.
Okay, so if we went with one of these options for the high school, we potentially be looking at, we talked about childcare needed, and we had to have kids come home for the potentially kids coming home, getting out earlier, watch their younger siblings when they get home.
If they need it.
If they needed it. But with the earlier start time in high school, would we be potentially looking at the need for parents to look at childcare in the morning? If they're
Relying on those kids at that time?
It all depends on where that start time is, because when we started this process, the board asked me to make sure we had wraparound care. We now have wraparound care. So that is hopefully to help offset that in sort of a preemptive blow. We wanted to make sure people had those options at each of our schools. The issue is that depending on where that elementary start time, we're going to try to keep the elementary as close as possible to the times that they are, because it makes the most sense. The question is, can you get the high school in, the middle school, intermediate school in, and the elementary somewhat relatively close together? You need one start time to do that. If it's beforehand, you know that middle school, intermediate, or elementaries are going to go early, somewhere around 7:20. A lot of times, there's a half-hour increment because you usually need about an hour to recover your buses. The 3-tier helps to shorten it. We just don't know how much it will shorten it. So if all of a sudden, say the high school's at 7:20 and the middle school was able to be perfectly at 7:50, notice we're right around the same times as we are right now, except for the high school. And that if the recovery from the high school and the short runs of the middle school allow the elementary to get between 8:25 and 8:35, we did the best job we could to keep it as status quo as possible. And yet in the afternoon, The high school would get out at 2:20, the middle school would get out at 2:50, the elementary would get out at 3:20, 3:25. So it's more systematic. The question is how much recovery time do you need between the secondary and the elementary and through? And they can only do that by actually developing and creating.
No, you've had your 2 chances. All right, so I'll say I'm in favor of the 720. I work under that system. I love working under that system. So I really enjoy it. Couple comments though. When I worked under the system, people were tardy at 7:20. So they said, well, we gotta start later because that'll take care of the tardiness problem. It didn't. All right? They was tardy at 7:50, they'll be tardy at 8:40. I don't see that as a reason to do one versus the other. They're gonna be tardy regardless. I think the faculty would be split. I know I said I loved it. I know I worked with people that loved it because the hunters especially, they were out at 2:20 and they were in the woods and they could hunt late in the afternoon. They couldn't hunt in the mornings. So those people all loved it. People that had young children like getting out early, so it's going to be split with the faculty. We've talked about minimizing time out of class for the students. You're also going to minimize time out of class for the teachers. The coaches get out early. So not only do students lose time in the classroom, students lose time with their teacher because the teacher goes to wherever the sport team goes. So I think that's also important. And I understand the argument of we start later for a lot of sporting events now. When I was there, we didn't. But bowling has to be out by 1:45 to be in Binghamton because the alleys in Binghamton close at 5 for their night leagues. There's no way the bowling team can't get out, or they have to be out at that time. So we're not going to resolve the bowling issues in regards to that. All right? I also think because if you have practice at 2:45, practice could be over at 4:45, possibility, because I think play practices start after athletes are done with practices. Play practice could start earlier in the evening now, so everybody benefits in that regard. So I like the 720, maybe and I'm biased, but I would support the 720, but I think there's other benefits unseen throughout the whole system.
Just to correct, I looked at Charles, bowling is now 4 o'clock, so they finally fixed that. So,
Golf too, golf.
oh yeah, so.
Those are the leagues that,
They changed their leagues.
Oh.
Yeah, well, our home ones are pretty bad.
Oh, well, the Binghamton one?
I'm not sure, every bowling alley is a little different, but yeah, they usually
It's
start around
gotten
4
better.
o'clock.
All right, 20 years ago, that was a no-no, maybe. All right, so the motion on the table is,
I know I already spoke twice, but I did some math and I actually just figured it out. I solved the problem so we don't have to do anything. If we pick a start time, let's say hypothetical, the majority of the bus routes are 45 minutes long, okay? We're gonna have 3 tiers, which means we're sending out 3 trips to buses, which means we need a minimum of 45 minutes in between each run, okay? Following? If we start at 7:20 a.m. for the high schoolers, 45 minutes leads us to the next start time of around 7:55. That would be elementary or the intermediate. The next run after that, the next start time is exactly where we are right now, the 8:40 start time. So right now we are having a debate about 8:40 7:40 or 7:20. So the other two start times and the effects that it would have would be either elementary, you would be sending at 7:55 instead of 8:30, 8:15, or you will send your intermediate school kids, who are the ones who need the most sleep, at 7:55 time, or you choose to send your elementary school kids at 8:40, which may be more of a hardship for daycare. So I think with this new information to light of what I just discovered, I think it's a great idea for the board to either call a special meeting and talk about this in 2 weeks, or to table the motion. So, well, okay, I guess I have to make a motion. So I would table this motion.
Wait,
So we can have
is
a
anybody,
bigger
there's a
discussion.
motion on the table, is anybody willing to withdraw the motion on the table?
Yeah, I withdraw the motion on the table for what? For the original, for whoever motioned for the 7.3? Is that what the question is? We have to withdraw the motion.
Correct.
The 7.3 in order to make a new motion to say table it, to let us have a little more time to discuss it. Okay, so I didn't, yeah. I didn't hear you.
Chris?
Just as a point of order, I believe what has to happen, so someone can make a motion to table a motion, and that motion then requires a second, and it needs to be, a majority vote. So that would table a motion on the floor, effectively, withdrawing it. So you don't need to withdraw then table. The tabling would be the withdrawal, but it needs a second, and it would need 5 votes.
Right.
Is that a majority or super
According to what I'm reading under Robert's rules, it's just a majority.
Okay, so my motion stands to just table this discussion about start times, so we can have more consideration at the next meeting with the understanding of all the parameters that everybody has, because I can just say that I believe that those are good. Is there a second?
I have a question on that. Are you talking about a special meeting or at the next meeting in October?
I'm okay tabling it until the next meeting in October.
Were we supposed to be voting on the motion that was already on?
All right, there's no second, so now we're, what?
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of the motion
To table.
to table?
Just to table it for a month.
All in favor of the motion to table? So 5-4, all opposed to the motion? So,
If the motion fails, then the other motion remains pending.
correct.
Yes.
Figured you know those.
So now we're back to, are we in favor of the 7:20, 7:25 starting time? That's the motion that's on the table. Call the question. All in favor? 4-5, all opposed? 4. Motion passes. All right, so now we have finance items for actions, and first we'll start with the audit committee report. Christine?
Okay, the audit committee met on September 11. We went through the external audit report with Tom Zuber, which we all heard from him tonight. But essentially, the committee, we looked at the general fund balance sheets, the reserve fund, revenue and expenditure sheets as well. The only current year opportunities really that were identified were the challenges with the self-funded health insurance. And as he mentioned tonight, the recommendation there is to investigate setting up a health insurance reserve fund. And that will be incorporated in the corrective action plan, which you can see as one of our finance items for action. So all prior year recommendations have been implemented, and overall it was a very positive audit. So thank you to
All right, I need an action vote on 8.03 through 8.12. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Inquiries, discussion, comments? Katrina?
Yes, so on this, when I'm looking at the revenue and expense report, some of the things, or perhaps it's the budget transfer as well.
What report?
Revenue and expense 8.1.
Revenue and expense, okay, yeah, that's the correct one, not the transfer.
There's three reports.
Hang on, I gotta get back to that, sorry. In general, I think overall, when I'm going through them, there were some of them that said, I don't know, maybe it's the budget transfer. Anyways, the budget transfer, it was saying, okay, yes. So going through, it says that the board, there was a couple of lines where it said the board made this decision back in 2023. So I'm wondering, why do items get put onto this month's report if they were already made in a different month?
Are you, I'm sorry, referring to the revenue and expense reports or the budget transfer report?
The budget transfer report.
Are you looking at June or August?
I don't know specifically, I haven't looked through my notes on my phone, but I was just trying to go from memory.
Okay, there's two reports.
Mm-hmm. One of them, it was like towards the bottom, and so just in general, it was like, I forget exactly a Carol entry, so here's one of them. It says, balance of sick days, balance of the account, contributed health insurance premiums, the board approved this on 8/15/24. So like some of the things on the report are when it was approved. Does that make sense?
Is this a
I'm still
budget
trying to
transfer?
figure out which report you're looking at.
Okay, so this is the June report. Okay, so June report, and then it says here, but the board approved it in 2024. So the report is from June, but we approved it in August. So I don't know.
Right, so our process
When do we see it on the August report? I guess is why I'm confused. Like, how do we see things in August on June?
So our process for end of year, because we have to do several budget transfers at the end of the year to get the books ready for the auditor, because of the timing of board meetings in the summer between closing our books in June and not having a board meeting until August. At the reorg meeting, Dr. Douglas and I had joint authority to approve transfers, so we can get the books closed in time for the auditor. Those transfers then come to the board in August for their approval at that point, but Dr. Douglas and I do have the authority over the summer to approve the transfers to get ready for the audit.
And is that a transfer in any amount of money? Like, I thought that everything like $10,000 or over had to go through the board.
So there's a special resolution that the board approves at the reorg meeting that gives us the authority to do so, and then we bring them to you in August for board action. But needing to understand that the timing of the board meetings necessitates for that process so we can get the books up to date for the audit.
Okay, gotcha, yeah, because I was noticing that, like, in some of them, like, it says, the $40,000 for cleaners, or the $10,000 for, that's where I was last night in my mind, thinking, okay, wait a second, I thought we had to approve that, but we,
Typically, yes.
okay. And then on the change order log, because I have more questions, but I'm gonna try to limit it. Looking at the highlight, so the admin, when it says admin, is that us? For the change order, it says the rework the generator conduits, that's $35,000. Replace copper with aluminum, that's $73,000. And then the school provided the copper, that's $17,000. So this is the change order log. So this is for the MDF relocation.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was not in the original budget?
Well, it's
the
all
reductions.
part of the budget.
Oh, okay, the reductions.
Yeah,
I was looking at it
administrative
like it
just means it's an administrative function. In other words, like when you were mentioning the copper, we had copper that could be used, and we were able to do it. So administratively, it was a credit for us to use stuff that we already have, and administratively, they accepted it. So that's actually a benefit.
Okay, and then what's, well, I guess I'm looking at the, okay, so then this OSD, this is the field condition, this is the kitchen, the steel in the kitchen, that was the $16,000?
Yep.
So we needed to replace the steel because,
Because there was a problem.
okay.
Yeah, that,
Where,
I mean,
where, can you tell me a little bit
no,
about
I
it?
can't. I mean, unfortunately, Mike's not here.
Oh, okay.
But what happens is all of this has been covered with the Facilities and Grounds Committee and board members on it. That's what I can tell you. But I think what happens, a lot of times, Katrina, something gets in there and they may have opened up a wall and they have to support it so that there's a change that they have to use steel to meet the codes. That's what that would normally mean.
Thank you, Trina. If I could just add to that. So the process of getting a change order through the system, there's a lot of people involved between our architect and the construction manager. Mike Conlon, Dr. Douglas gets involved sometimes to really vet and evaluate if a change order is needed, why a change order is needed, negotiation of pricing, alternative solutions. So these aren't things that are done, I don't want to say on a whim, but there is a lot of thought and behind the scenes work that goes into change orders before they even begin to go through the process.
If I can sort of bring up at the last board meeting, if you watched it, I asked the board for a one-time special authorization to exceed my $35,000 limit, and they exceeded it up to 70. I just got notified yesterday that they came up with a better option for something at Big Flats, that it's actually not going to be where they thought 65 to 70. They will do it a little better, and it came from the contractor saying we could do something this way instead, and once they all agreed, ultimately, I believe that they said the price is $38,000. Well, we have $8,000 in, what is it, the A word. I can't think of it. You know how we have contingent and then they have allowance? Yes. We have 8,000, which is already in their contract for unexpected things. So that 38 is now down to 30, which is under my 35. So I really didn't need the permission from the board, but I already authorized it because it will put those windows in, because unfortunately, whoever built Big Flats took a lot of shortcuts in a wall that nobody would ever know. And when we opened it up, it is the right thing to do to fix the situation, but yet still maintain the scope and get light into the new lines. Right, but that will be a change order you'll see coming, but it's already been approved, but it's been vetted, searched, and also in compliance with state ed, where now I don't have to apply for state ed if it's over 35,000, which is a good thing for us.
Other questions? All right, call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Sorry, I missed the vote aye.
They were approving the finance.
I was voting no on the budget transfer report because I did not realize that he had done that whole process in July. I think I would agree, like, just on nothing against anybody, but, so I vote no on that.
Just on that.
8, yep, the transfers, yeah.
All right, you'll have to bear with me 1 second.
Here you go.
My computer.
Section 9.
All right. So we move to section 9. I need a vote, a motion on 9.02, 9.03, 9.04.
Second.
Q. On this section?
On 9, yeah.
Okay.
I am going to abstain from 9.02 B8. I have a conflict. It's a family member. And then for 9.03
between the board meetings with key personnel, which are identified only. Does not include administration or instructional staff.
I'm gonna decline, I'm gonna vote no on that as well. I don't think it holds our to our accountability and transparency of the checks and balance system.
Other, Mary Ann?
My computer has just ran out of power, so I'm using my paper copies that I always make as a backup plan. I have a question about the HR recommendations. Sadly, my papers have gotten out of order, but I'm referring to section H, instructional contract substitutes. Now, these people may have worked for the district, they may be retirees. I don't have the information to know their background, but number one, Leonard Satterley, I don't see anything listed there. Is he degree, non-degree, certified?
Mr. Satterley, he is degree, but he's not certified.
Okay. And the next group, item I, there's a list of 7 more people. And again, I think I recognize a couple names, but are all of those people degree?
They are, in fact, you recognize some retirees in there. These people are all degree, and most of them are certified with the exception of 2 that have pending certifications, which is why they're in this section rather than probationary hires.
Okay, thank you.
This is also helpful because these retirees that are coming back are under the waiver system and very hard to fill positions at this time across New York State.
Any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Sue?
So, under the instructional long-term substitutes on 1, 2, and 3, you have the effective date 9/3/24 to 6/30/24. Should that be 6/30/25?
Which number is it again? Letter I.
Same I.
1, 2, and 3.
Number 3?
No, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, you got
Because the
24 versus
effective-
25.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for catching that. If we'll amend that in the official record to 6/25.
Right, because I'm like, they did.
Yeah. They're done.
So it's 1, 2, and 3. And then, do I abstain because, and, I don't know.
E.24.
Yeah.
E.24. That's true.
Okay, B.24, I'll abstain from that, but I'll vote for the rest. Do I say that now?
Yep, it's noted, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Trina?
Yes, I also have to abstain from E.24, family member. And then I am just wondering about some of the appointments where it says to be determined as far as start date goes. And I'm not sure if this is a conversation that we have to go into executive session to have, because I'm just trying to get a little bit more of an understanding on what that means to be determined.
Item V, 6, 7, 8.
B, 6, 7, and 8.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, we can tell you that.
Transfers. They're current staff members. The transfers are pending. So there's a cascade of internal transfers. There was a vacancy, which then led to a cascade of people moving to the backfill space and moving to the backfill space. And all of those transfers will take effect once we have all the positions filled and students' needs are met and the building is ready to say, yes, we can move forward with all these information.
This way kids
So
are
they're
having
in
the
the
consistency of their
future.
education maintained until we're ready to transfer.
Okay, so I wanted to have more discussion about this to inform the board about anything. When I motion to go into executive session, to not,
Talk about that.
yeah, to not talk about.
So you have a specific issue with the personnel?
No, I don't have a specific issue with the personnel. I guess it would be, what's, like the cascading effect of what's happening, right? Because there was a resignation, and so there's this cascading effect. And with everything that we have going on in the redistricting, how many times?
It has nothing to do with
cascaded?
redistricting, it has to do with just right here and now. So what happens is until we get to the point that nobody wants to transfer into a position, because this is all governed by contract. So when we get to a point, say we're down to the position and nobody wants that position internally and we have an outside candidate, we hire that candidate, once we know that person, we will be able to say, this is when you're starting, and as we do it, everybody pretty much makes the shift at once, so that one classroom isn't going to be impacted, have a new teacher or a sub, then another class, new teacher or sub, then another class, new teacher or sub, where it's a constant ending battle that the students are educationally being pulled away from their normal environment. Right now, the teacher that's currently with them will stay with them and keep education moving forward until everybody can switch, and then still maybe have 1 or 2 days of downtime instead of possibly a month. That's what's going on.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to be able to, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say to the rest of the board, but I think it's important for the board to be able to kind of understand situationally how things, like what might be happening in the CAT, because it's hard to see it on the report, I guess, as to what's happening, but I don't want to name any names or, you know, call it. So that's why I think that this is a discussion to have an executive session to protect that and just to be able to inform the board. So it would be a very quick discussion. I motion to go into executive session for 5 minutes just to explain what I'm trying to say about this.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Give discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to 5-minute executive session, I just don't really understand, this is all contractually driven.
Right.
I don't understand what we would have discussed, we have no ability to change the contract, we have no ability to, you know, pick someone and put them in a different spot, if contractually they have a right to it, so.
And timing is the superintendent's prerogative.
So I just don't understand what the purpose of it would be.
I agree with Dan. I mean, it's contractually, I mean, whether it's fair or not, I used to be grievance. I didn't think all things were fair, but I understood the contract. And sometimes I disagreed with the contract, but if it's contractual, it's contractual.
So,
Christine?
I think, you know, not knowing exactly what Katrina needs to say, I think one, just to kind of listen and even if it's just for 5 minutes, I mean, it could be also a learning, right? So we might find out it's something that, you know, we didn't have to go to an executive session for, or it is all contractual. So I think we, courtesy-wise, we should have the ability to listen.
So my question would be then, can we, out of respect to all the other people that are still here, finish the meeting and then end with executive session? Or you're saying you don't want to pass or do anything on the HR recommendations? Because I think we're being totally disrespectful at 10 o'clock at night going into executive session. And for a fact, I know it won't be 5 minutes.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have the timer going.
I've had the timer going all along, and I've taken a lot of gruff for saying it's over. So I know for a fact it's not going to be a 5-minute discussion.
Can we vote on everything except for this, and then finish the meeting, go into executive session, and then come back and vote on this in public session?
Okay. So, all in favor of going into executive session? 5, so. 5-4, or opposed, I guess we're gonna do the opposed. 5-4.
Tell the camera, we adjourn your executive session. We'll be back in roughly 5 minutes.
Come back from executive session. The camera is on. So now we are returning to public session. And we have a motion on the table for items 9.02 through 9.04. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Only to 9.03.
Okay.
No, I didn't oppose.
I think Ms. Main's got your, was it at 9.24 or something?
Yes.
Okay, so she,
B,
Abstain, yes.
abstain.
If I get those.
okay. So there was no opposed and no other abstentions then?
You got mine right.
I oppose to 903.
Yeah.
And abstain from
Right.
902B8. Thank you.
All right, moving on to section 10. I need a motion on 10.02 through 10.11.
Second.
Curiosities, discussion, comments? Liz?
You have to abstain from 10.06 for personal reasons.
Oh.
I just have a question, I didn't know. if it was-
Julie,
Sorry.
yeah?
I have a question on 10.07, the inflatable tunnel. Is there, how that will be utilized? Any insight on how that tunnel is going to be utilized?
It can be utilized by any athletic team.
So
as
it's not,
such.
sorry. So it's not just for the stadium, that's what my question is gonna be. I wanna make sure.
Well, the tunnel is huge.
Oh, is it?
It's not gonna be able to fit inside, so it is an outdoor tunnel. It's used for stadium mostly.
Gotcha, okay.
But you can use it for
Didn't-
soccer,
I didn't know
football,
how they-
lacrosse,
okay.
anything like that.
Thank
yeah.
you, appreciate
Yep.
it.
All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I think I have to abstain from 10.02.
No, 10.10.
But yes, for 10.02.
Well, no, but also 10.02. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 10.10, I have to abstain from 10.10 also. And 10.02.
And I'll abstain from 10.10 too. I don't think I can.
Policy Committee report, Mr. Christmas?
Policy Committee met on September 5th. We did not have any policies for second reading because we're in the beginning of our review cycle. We had 3 policies for first reading, which are on the agenda. One had a very minor change. I think we just added an internal reference, 5460, 5500. We wanted to get some legal input on directory information, so we tabled that. And then 5660 has some red line edits reflected in the agenda. That's all.
All right, so now we go to the President's report, and I just want to say congratulations to Ms. Tembis and her cohorts. Horsehead School District was recognized, national recognition, for being a Special Olympics Unified Champion School. And not only were they recognized this year, this is the 2nd year in a row such an honor has been bestowed upon the district and the hard work of Ms. Tembis and her cohort. So congratulations.
Point of order, don't we need to vote on 12? on the
No, it's
vote,
first
okay.
reading.
But
First-
how
Oh, I'm
discussion,
sorry.
though?
Yeah.
It was 12. We didn't have any discussion on any of the policies.
Oh, good point, good catch. Does anybody have a discussion on first readings? All right,
The only discussion that I had was when I was reading the one about the student gifts. I kind of
which
felt-
policy, which number, please?
Third one down, 5660. So when you're looking at the highlight one, it says elaborate or expensive. I mean, I guess I don't really know what the parameters are. Like, if it's expensive to one person and it's not expensive to another person, like, I feel like that's a little bit too, broad of a term, you know? So I guess I would rework that. That was my only suggestion. Expensive is, okay, so $100 to somebody might not be expensive, but $20 to somebody might be expensive, and who is that left up to the interpretation of? So, I don't know. I just feel like we shouldn't try to micro it too much and have somebody say, you know, oh, that's too much of a gift, that person's clearly doing that. Like, let's just let people give and not have to have the scrutiny of it, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. So that was my only suggestion.
Can I respond briefly?
Certainly.
Just as policy committee chair, thank you for the comment. What I explained, so we talked in the meeting, this is really just to offset the second sentence, which then says what's encouraged are inexpensive gifts, right? And so we're saying we discourage expensive. This is aspirational language. It's not a strict requirement here. It talks about being encouraged and discouraged. So there's no punitive action that would be taken if one person were to, allege that a gift was expensive versus not. So I think it's a fair point, but kind of took comfort in the reasonable person sense of what expensive would constitute. That was the thinking of the committee.
All right, now we're gonna go to section 13.02, board member comments.
Sue, for correction.
Mrs. Markey, or Mrs. Omarski?
You can call me Sue.
Okay.
I couldn't get on my device and I should have abstained from 9.04, Candy.
Okay, 9.04.
9.04 I should have abstained from, but my device does not like me on my touch. So, I have to work on that. And, I just wanted to add, you said you're not gonna do anything with passes on,
The night of homecoming, there's too many.
so if I show up without a pass, I'll still be able to do it.
Well, your board member thing should get you in.
Oh, I think.
I bought my.
But what happens is you can get it beforehand, on the 26th, but
There you go.
you don't have your board passes?
What's board passes?
I don't know.
I bought my pass.
I think they charge us twice.
We will work that out.
I don't need a refund.
We will still work it out.
We got better board passes.
As your board, you and your significant other should be able to attend school functions.
Well, he came that night, I just didn't.
Well, I know, well, I saw Ed, because he was with Arnold.
That's for sure.
I'm glad so, I was glad he was able to be there.
Dan?
I'll keep it really brief because I know it's late. It's hard to believe it's only, September 19th. And it feels like school started months ago, but it was just very recently. And I just, another amazing back to school year for me now. I'm down 3 kids out, 2 to go, but it's been great for those 2. So I have great thanks for all the members of the district in terms of the support they provide and everything they did to get the school year off to a wonderful start. That's all.
Julie?
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came and presented tonight or came and spoke. I think it was great. I love hearing from everyone in the community. I know they're not here now, except for you. Thank you for staying. And then to my fellow board members, I would just ask that there's been several instances where we act unprofessional. We need to remember that we're representing our community and our school. We are all very proud of it. I understand the passion can sometimes set into that, but I ask that we think about our behaviors and our comments going forward, and we act as we're expected to. Our community voted us in here, and they expect better of us, and we should hold each other to that standard. Thank you.
Anybody else? Aaron?
I have a positive thing I wanted to share in our community. One of our students in the middle school, who is now in the high school, became involved in a creative process through the NISMA Association, and it's called A Call for Creators. Miss Claire Roofer wrote a song that was accepted by NISMA Conference Allstate, and she will be performing that song as a 9th grader, and it will be performed at the state level, and that will be in December. Her teacher at the time was Mrs. Jordan Windrell. So I just wanted to give that incredible shout out because that is a really amazing achievement for one of our young students to be honored in such a way, to be able to share that at a state level. Amazing.
I didn't realize she was at the high school. I haven't seen her.
9th grader.
So,
The LECON thing you were talking about, is that just for junior students?
It's really for going into your senior year, but they'll start now talking with juniors beforehand so that they can prep. And I actually just signed it. So.
Oh, because I got it, okay.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Trina?
I think I also have to abstain, Candy, from the .04 because of my PIN number. So I have a couple of things. One, there was the try out your instrument night here in the intermediate, and it was the first time that I got to come and experience that. And it was awesome. Every music teacher took just as much time to hold the reeds or move the mouthpieces or do, I mean, I had tears in my eyes, just in every single person, and it was hot, and they did a phenomenal job. It was a really great experience, and all the kids were so pumped. It was really cool, because when I was a kid, I didn't, you just kind of guessed what you wanted, and that was it, So that was a really neat experience. So thank you to the music department for putting that on, because it really was incredible. And another thing I wanted to bring up is kind of like an honor. Billy Whiffler, he was a teacher at the Big Flats Elementary School for many years, and he passed away last year. And we went to his memorial at the Elks Club. He was a longtime member of the Elks. And we were able to do that in August, and he was my tennis coach, and he was just a really great person, and so I just wanted to let the people, know about that. That was a really great ceremony that they held for him. And we have the Center Street Carnival on October 4th. It's a Friday, and we are always looking for volunteers. If anybody from the board is free on that Friday night and you want to come run games or book fair part of it or any of that stuff, feel free. Or if you have young kids and you just want to check it out, because we really throw a great
Friday the 4th?
Friday, October 4th, we had to
What
move
time?
it. We had to move it because of homecoming. That was
Okay, that's why I'm like, Friday the 4th, I know that date.
That's not homecoming.
No, that's corny.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because we had talked about that. We had talked about that. It was scheduled. So those are the three big things. So thanks for sticking with us if you stuck this far.
Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you to the general public who may be listening on live stream, and drive home safely.